In this 12-episode series, we're using critical theory to explore the superhero web serial Worm from a broader perspective, covering Worm in 6 300,000-ish word chunks.
Mm-hmm. And today is part 1 of book 3, so it's the overview episode. And here we're going to close read arcs 15 through 17, commenting on the most key points of the story and kind of going into this plot-based examination in this like very linear fashion, where we'll be pulling recurring and emerging themes, as we go along.
So if you haven't read arcs 15, 16, and 17 yet, please do, because this is a full spoilers discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But all right, without further ado, let's get into it.
Here we go.
So, Clarence, what did you think of arcs 15, 16, and 17?
I feel like there was there's a very distinct shift between kind of the first 8 arcs versus like the 9 through 14, which that one feels very much like it's very fast paced, and like we don't really notice as much about. I mean, we do notice the like difference in setting, but we're not like focused on that. Like we're so focused on like what's going to happen this very next moment, and it's very like action packed. But then these few arcs, there was a little bit more of that kind of really looking at the city unraveling and kind of what to do about that. Like it's not just these kind of glimpse. We were really kind of addressing the deterioration and this kind of how are we going to save it or not save it, all of this. The first 8 arcs is a normal city that's just having some explosions, and then 9 through 14 it's the waterlogged post-apocalyptic thing where it's kind of the entire city is in a terrible state, and now we're starting to like get into the rebuilding, but it's still a tenuous one, and it's very like bogged down.
Yeah, and I think this is where you kind of get like different areas are in different states of repair, right? Skitter's territory is not as waterlogged, while others are, and there's whole sections that are just like abandoned, and some that are populated, and then there's stuff like the mayor's house, which is on a hill and not waterlogged, and
where it's like nice and the grass is cut and all of this.
Right, and so right there, you can kind of forget that the entire city is not in that state. The other thing I think is significant is, in 8 is the first destruction of the city. 9 through 14 is just a continuing, state. And so with this rebuilding section, we're kind of seeing like this is how things are supposed to be improving. And then we have stuff like Coil blowing up the debate, just to kind of remind us that like this normal that we're coming back to is not the original normal still.
Yeah. There won't be a return to the status quo.
Yeah.
Which I think is what also kind of like sets the heroes into this kind of like their whole, debate about what their role is, and that sort of thing about like condemning the city, all of this. I think that the realization that there needs to be something new, some other way to like rebuild the city. I think that's what's kind of like set them into this spiral that they kind of end up into.
Yeah, they're kind of backed into a corner, and the old methods don't work, and so they're trying to find what new ones are acceptable. Yeah. Okay, let's get into the key moment by key moment discussion. So as usual, it's unfortunately impossible to mention every single beat of every through line, so we're going to try to consolidate them into particular moments. And we're also going to miss a bunch of different moments. This arc is about 130,000 words less than the last one, and yet our script is just as long. I think subconsciously I just like let myself put in more. And once they're on the page, it really doesn't feel like any of them can be cut. So and there's still more that I want to add, but
We're very and there's all these moments that like even if we don't get to them in this episode, I feel like we can bring them up in the perspectives because we have all those like little interim moments. Yeah.
Well, if you want to hear more content, the stuff that we still miss here, there's always We've Got Worm, which of course covers everything in detail. So please go listen to that as well. Okay. So let's start off with Arc 15, Colony, in which the Nazis are kicked out, Skitters tortures Skitter tortures Triumph, and Coil plans to kill her. So we start off with Taylor and Rachel having a bit of a bonding moment. There's actually a lot with Rachel in these arcs. So here, Taylor, here we see we see Rachel's underlings. Barker does the whole spitting in her face thing with his power, basically.
Yeah, jeez.
And her retribution. But Rachel lets one of her vets have one of her dogs, which is kind of a big step in her growth. And Taylor gives her coat, and Rachel's kind of moved by it, even though she tries to keep quiet about it, basically. And then the Undersiders decide to take Coil on.
Yeah, all of the interactions with Rachel, they seemed like before they were very tenuous and like you weren't really sure what was going to happen and you feel like there could be like some violence breaking out. But then now it seems like she's kind of sort of like settled in to accept these like friendship establishing things that Taylor is doing. That she's kind of like accepted the need for that emotional bond. Yeah,
it's interesting. So like that's a good point about the threat of violence has mostly gone away. Like there's still, the worry that she'll take it the wrong way and get pissed, right? Yeah. But like when Taylor gives her the coat, there's no, even though Taylor is, couching her words and trying to make sure that everything's okay. And Rachel is suspicious and, wondering what's the cost to this, because usually gifts come with a cost. There isn't a threat of like, she's going to punch Taylor in the face because obviously she wants to like manipulate her or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
she's
and that's
kind of
growth.
Like, she's like sort of becoming this like, I mean, she isn't quite yet, but I feel like she becomes later this like ride or die of like Taylor. She like very much adopts Taylor as a friend to like, this to keep her forever,
Yeah. We see later on when they're fighting the dragon suits, and Rachel just completely trusts Taylor to come up with a plan about anything, basically.
Yeah.
And says, okay, so we're fighting this thing. You just come up with a plan, and we'll do it, and we'll take it out. And Taylor's like, well, it's not that simple.
Yeah, what are you talking about? But it like there is this sort of like established
trust.
Yeah.
Also, so at the beginning here, I think it's this really notable moment where Taylor basically thinks to herself, why am I doing this? And last overview, I think we commented on, she doesn't really, we don't really get a lot of Taylor's motivations, and like we in her own narration, Taylor's outreach to Rachel is not like super, like she says, I want to be your friend, but it doesn't actually come specifically from like, you're a wonderful person and I like talking to you kind of place.
Yeah, there's not like a clear reason for friendship overtures.
Right. And so here, Taylor actually reflects on it, and it's still not, I love being around you kind of friendship, but she considers that if she just chose to be coworkers instead of, or just teammates instead of friends, it would be abandoning Rachel to a pretty lonely existence. And so we see like there's some sympathy here. There's some
I feel like there's almost like empathizing too, because she's like, she's experienced that loneliness.
That's true. Yeah.
And I feel like she kind of almost sees like a not quite kindred spirit, because she's like off doing her thing, but I don't know. I think she sees herself a little bit in Rachel.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So about Coil, this is where. So all throughout this arc, and of course we're continuing from the last section, Taylor is still engaging in this doublethink where she both knows that he's not going to release Dinah, and yet is also acting completely as if he is.
Yeah, it's so like it confuses me to no end. This whole time that I was reading, I was so confused about like why she. I don't know. It just seemed like a very specific, singular thing for her to focus on. Like there's so much other things that like Coil is doing and like that are happening around her that she like. It just seemed like such a specific, small thing to focus. I mean, it's not that like Dinah's situation is like, okay or anything like that. She's definitely like in a not great place,
Yeah.
But like. I don't know, it just seems so strange that she was like so specific in focusing on Dinah.
Yeah, and then this tunnel vision of hers, just
where she's like, if this gets fixed, then everything else will be fixed.
Right, and yet she's complicit in a lot of other horrible things happening, and actively involved in others. Like, not the mayoral blackmailing that goes on.
There was the whole family there.
Exactly. So it's like even if we're not just specifically talking about Triumph, which she's already kind of wrestling with that. Yeah. So like she's at least thinking about that slightly, even if she doesn't actually decide to change her ways because of it. There was also 2 little girls there.
She totally right? She just kind of like dismisses the whole rest of the family and like the children and all of this, but she was just kind of like, oh, I almost killed that guy, but like let's keep going. Yeah. I don't know. It just, I feel like she chooses to focus on Dinah so she doesn't acknowledge other things, Also that, sorry, I'm just like bringing up all of this at the immediate moment, but like
I think this is a part of the story where like everything gets much, much more intertangled, and so it's a little bit harder to talk about one piece when you know the parts in the future of it.
There's like, I mean, even earlier on when Coil was like articulating what he was planning to do, I don't know, I guess I was just surprised that she took it at like face value, where she was like, oh yes, that does seem like that would be his plan.
Yeah, of course he would want to improve the city.
Yeah,
of course
I guess I just like
completely altruistic.
I feel like there's so many unspoken plans that like probably go beyond the city, or like, there's, I don't know, she just, it just, I feel like Coil, we're presented with Coil and we like are expected to like accept his plans and all the things that he says.
Yeah.
But like, we're like, the Undersiders are like his employees, like he doesn't have to tell them everything.
No,
he does.
Not.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It just seems like it was much more messy than and like much more complicated than than any of them were really like considering.
Yeah.
I mean, later on we see that like we think about it, but.
So after this first introduction, then we get into Brandish or Carol's interlude. So here we finally see the capstone basically to what happened with Amy and Glory Girl. So we see Carol's her trigger event, which is pretty dark.
It is.
I think literally 2. She needs to have like lights on and stuff. And we see a glimpse of Alan Barnes as a normal human being, not as a terrible
Alan
person.
Barnes, he's Emma's dad, yes.
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
that's what I thought he was.
Yeah. Yes. Definitely the first time I read it, I did not remember that. Actually, the first time I read it, I didn't realize that Thomas Calvert was the same guy from the Nilbog interlude.
Oh, really?
I just had forgot it. Like, it's so the second time I read it, I got to the Nilbog interlude. I was like, wait a second. Oh my God, is that the same guy? And I thought that I had like figured it out, but no, it was, you were supposed to be able to figure it out.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Or not figure it out. It's just a repeated name. You just have to remember.
Well, I kind of like I like stuck a sticky note, in that moment, because I was like, I feel like someone who walks free after like deliberately killing, not just like mercy killing. I feel like he'll come back. And here he is.
Yeah. So Carol finds Amy, who is destroyed mentally, and Glory Girl, who is destroyed both physically and still not fixed mentally. And terrible. Amy says,
like, what has Amy been doing this whole time? I mean, it hasn't been that long, but like, Amy.
Yeah. Oh, what are you picturing when you, what did you get from the image of Glory Girl, or Victoria as she is now?
I feel like she seemed kind of melted a bit.
Yeah.
And then like, she's like kind of her, but then like in the sort of like, if you paint over a painting and then you don't paint it right, it's like somebody who does renovations or like restores a painting, but it's complete shit. Like they're not a good restorer, you know? So like suddenly Madonna has like a terrible face.
Yeah.
Or like Jesus has the face of a cat. I don't know. Just.
Right.
It seemed like it was not correct, Yeah. It was just
and
like.
It's almost the definition of the uncanny valley, right? Where she just couldn't get it right. So everything is off. And she repeated the mistakes over and over again and just kept adding on. I guess she just like, that arm's wrong. Let me make another one. And that one's wrong. Let me make another one.
It's terrible.
Yeah. And yeah, so
It's quite
Amy,
I can't even imagine being like the mother who comes into this situation and like finds her daughter and the daughter that she has been forced to take in. I don't know, I don't even know how she would go on. I mean, like she probably can't, but like that just seems so devastating.
Yeah. And this is there's a lot in this interlude. There's additional stuff. We see Amy getting taken away from Marquis. Also, I've decided I'm just going to switch back and forth between Marquis and Marquis because I was trying to say Marquis and then Marquis slipped in anyway.
Yeah, so I think if I say Marquis, I will have to very actively think about it.
Sure.
Because in my head it is just Marquis.
So far, I have already been slipping back and forth.
Yeah.
So that's the pattern, and I'm going to stick to it.
Yeah, it's fine.
So, taking away Amy from Marquis, she.
But then it's almost
Amy
like
here, it's like I don't want her.
She didn't get like taken away. Almost, it was like he deliberately set this up so that they could come take her. You know. I don't know. I feel like that.
Well, I think.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I think he wasn't trying to get captured. They attacked him in his home, and his daughter was there, and he was like, "Well, I'm gonna lose this fight,
so you might as well take her."
Please take her so she doesn't get
interesting.
Murdered.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's more to say about their relationship in the later interlude.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other thing to focus on is Amy decides that she needs to go to the birdcage.
She does, which is such an odd thing to do, I guess. I don't know, because like she still hasn't fixed her what she has messed up.
Yeah.
And she doesn't need to go into she needs to go and speak to somebody or process what she has done and find remorse in herself and absolution and catharsis. I don't know. She needs to sort out her head. And not get sent into a place that does not cultivate that at all.
It's a black hole.
Yeah,
she literally cannot leave
she's basically
to fix her mistake.
Just continuing to run away and to not face what she has done. But now she's stuck there for however long.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not surprising that she decided that, but it is again. It just feels like she doesn't. I don't know. She just. Amy.
Yeah, and it's this. Yeah, Amy.
But
it's this such a complicated. She feels that she can't get it right.
Yeah.
That she feels that she cannot. Which that's. I don't think that's. I think that's a valid. I think that might be her valid stance that she's okay, there's no way that I can fix this. I fucked it up too much.
Yeah.
However, she can still make it better.
Yeah,
right. She can make Victoria into not a blob. She can make her into a girl, if not Victoria.
Yeah, it's like that fish. That's what I imagined her walking. Is that fish? The one with the face. Where it's not a fish, but
not really.
It's the face with the
blobfish.
Gaping... Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know
I think it's literally called a blobfish.
I don't know the colloquial term for it, but yes, that's what I imagined.
I think it's that, except it has more than one head and arms and legs.
Oh, horrendous.
Yeah. Yep.
But, okay.
And she still didn't fix her brain either, so...
Yeah.
I mean, we don't... She definitely doesn't say that she fixed it, so...
Yeah.
Yeah. It's this, this... I don't want to say perfectionism, but anything less than total complete, fixing of what she originally did, unless she can wipe it away so it never happened, then she can't do anything.
But then that's a whole nother big mess.
Yeah, that's what she wanted to do originally. I think
she's just
too.
Living with that in her own head, that she has done this and erased it, and now she knows in her and then would Victoria just go back to thinking that they're just sisters again?
Yeah.
Oh, so messy.
I think that's what she wants. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. That's her best case scenario.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But alright, we've already spent a little bit on this moment.
Yes.
So let's move on. Even though we have more written down, but
onward.
Onward. So then we come back to Skitter's story. The Undersiders fight some Nazis and win. They decide to tax them by body controlling Victor. However, they didn't tell Taylor. And then Tattletale also uses some pretty brutal manipulation on the Nazis' relationships.
Yeah.
And Taylor is, really pissed off that she wasn't involved in making the call.
Yes. The debate about Victor, which I would like to point out, is Taylor, like, she's not mad about, like, the morality of it. Like, because I feel like she could rationalize what happened. She's just mad that she didn't have the control over the situation. Like, she wanted to be involved in the planning. Like, she has, like, I was thinking about this, like, earlier about her, like, micromanaging. Like, all of her, like, multitasking is basically her micromanaging, you know? Yeah. She's not, like, I mean, she sort of trusts people to do things, but, like, she sticks a bug on them to, like, make sure that happens, you know? Like, she wants to know what's happening, you know, and she gets very upset when she doesn't.
That's very true. Every time someone doesn't read her instructions, like with Trickster at the mayor's place, not that it was really instructions, she was, like, giving them information, but she was just, like, so frustrated. She was like, is he illiterate? Is he? Yeah.
It's terrible. But she just, I don't know, she just has, like, very specific expectations, and she wants those to be met. Yeah.
Increasingly on the battlefield, she tells people what they should be doing.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
With her bugs.
Is this before or after when they were kind of like, oh, you should take over for Brian as, like, leader?
When the dragon suits show up in Arc 16. Yeah. Yes, that's when she's like, okay, let me take the lead. Yeah. Yeah.
Which also, just, like, as a side note to that, like, all of the debate, I think, about, like, you know, temporarily taking over as, like, leader, like, she already is, you know? Yeah. Like, she took control over the group, I would say, when the 9 showed up, you know, and she hasn't really, like, relinquished it since then. Yeah. Just, I mean, definitely. Just the way that she acts, you know, and, like, how she's the one telling the Undersiders what to do, but then also, as an extension, she's, like, using whoever else is allied with them. I don't know. She's like, already stepped into the leadership role.
Yeah. By the time they go to the villain meeting in, during like Arc 10, or I think it might be Arc 11. Yeah. Anyway.
On the, like, the little island.
Yeah. So Brian is, like, technically the leader, right? But he's like, even there, he just seems completely like a figurehead, right?
Because she's the one who speaks up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She's the one who makes the decision there, the only decision that gets made there, essentially. So, and then especially in the aftermath. So yeah. And it's, like, continually her plan with stuff. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but also, so the aside that I noticed, this repeated, you know, pattern that probably doesn't mean anything, but there's just so much, like, dentistry comments that she is thinking about, you know?
That is,
like, true. She has this whole little aside.
The point here is, where she looks at, well, actually, specifically what happens here is they start having, what was it? I think it's basically, you know, Regent treats Shatterbird, you know, badly and is, like, insulting her, and then Regent explains that this is, you know, this is a means to an end, right? And
it's her teeth. We're thinking about her teeth, and isn't it?
Yeah, and then Shatterbird's teeth. Yeah,
and then Taylor goes on this whole little, like, aside about, like, oh, like, how are their teeth, like, kept clean? Like, are they all like, what is this? I don't know. It just seems like
in that moment, she's doing it because she doesn't want to think about the moral implications of allowing this to continue. She just kind of drops it. Yeah. So that's interesting. That
it just seems like there's again, like, a repeated pattern, because later on it appears again. Dentistry. I mean, it's not like a theme or anything. It's just it's something that you know.
It comes up 2 more times in this section with when she gets injured from Flechette, the surgery that's done on her is done with that whole dentist rotary thing.
They have to, like, use dentistry tools. But they have them there?
Yeah, they have them there because there is a dentist in Skitter's territory, and she got equipment from Coil so that they could start working. So strange. And then during Marquis Interlude, Panacea is being competition for one of teacher's dentists, basically. Yes. And so Yeah, so that does come up.
Well, like I guess like if you really start thinking about like the state of teeth, you know, like the availability of water, the availability of anything to clean teeth, you know, or like the type of food that you're eating, you know, or the amount of nutrients you're getting, and your teeth are weak, or like you develop cavities or this sort of thing, or your teeth have to get cut out. You know, I guess it really is sort of like a little bit of a indicative of the state of the city and the environment.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It just seemed like such a peculiar thing to keep reappearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, complete different section.
Anyways.
But no, I'm still on this tangent because now that I'm thinking about it, with the birdcage, the fact that like one dentist in the entire birdcage is like charging everyone else for checkups is like so wrong. Like
it's terrible.
They're not even provided any real medical services.
Yeah,
like,
and
I still get, you know, Panacea being, you know, a bigger deal because she can actually like solve long-term stuff. But it seems that there might not even be just like you know, Dragon's a supreme AI, right? So like they don't know that, but she is, right? So she could like have a room, right, where people lie down. She like works on them with like robot arms or whatever.
Yeah, like.
But then I guess it's introducing weapons. But yeah,
you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
Put a pin in that. You know, I'm kind of like making a list of things for the birdcage and how it is a human rights violation.
Yes.
Because I absolutely agree.
Okay.
So that's one of them.
That is one of them, and I'm sure there's many more.
There's many.
So following this is Brian's interlude. So obviously there's a lot here. He's horribly traumatized, and we open with him, you know, punching a punching bag until his knuckles are bloody, and he's seeing visions of Bonesaw. He can't control his heart rate or anything.
Yeah.
He hates. I'm going to read a quote. Says, hated that his body, which that he'd always seen as something under his absolute control, a tool to be honed, was betraying him with its anxiety, panic, and weakness. His power, too, was a tool that now carried so many negative connotations. He hated that everything seemed so ugly now. The city was soiled, ruined, and festering. His friends and family were tainted with negative associations. So he just feels completely unable to escape this. He doesn't feel that he can talk about it with anyone because that would be admitting weakness, and he can't do that at this point. And so he just feels utterly trapped in this. Also, I think it's worth mentioning, it's only been like a week since
recovering from like PTSD, which he's absolutely like in the midst of like post-traumatic stress syndrome, right? From this traumatic event. That can like take a while, you know, the like recovery, like and so he's
in his
still
own narration,
kind of, like,
he's like, it's been. I don't know if he actually specifically says it, but he says something like, "It's been 5 days. Why am I not over this?" or something.
Yeah, but it's also like
an insane thing to say.
Yeah, that's a ridiculously short amount of time to expect yourself to be better from something this, you know, like, you know, I mean, his whole body was like outside of his body, and then it got put back in. Like that's just a lot, and he had to like watch all of his friends get their heads cut. I don't know, just there's so much for him to process.
I mean, any angle, even just like seeing the friends and people being threatened that bad would take more than 5 days to get fully over.
Like 100%. Just
I mean, every one of them are now traumatized by his experience. Like Taylor is also would be traumatized just by seeing him like that. Like, I'm sure it's affecting her pretty badly. She just ignores it because that's Taylor's thing.
She just that's her like coping mechanism. It's just kind of like keep going forward and not examining all things in the past. I don't know. She also needs to like kind of have a sit down and like examine what she's experiencing. I mean, like a lot of them do. Yeah. But there is something to be said about... One of our listener
questions is who needs therapy, and and they preempted the answer, all of them, because obviously all of them.
Yeah, but Brian, he seems to be one of the ones that is like having the most difficulty and kind of like, I mean, adjusting, but I mean, you can hardly say adjusting if it's been 5 days, but like he's still kind of like in the midst of that. And it's really interesting. I wanted to note here, particularly in his interlude, in the way that it's like written, the way it's kind of portrayed is because like so often, like in novels, the inner monologues, like they're interspersed, right, between like dialogue, and the dialogue, you know, progresses like they weren't happening. All of this, you know, like we see them thinking, but then like we don't think about the time that it takes for the thinking. But then like with him,
the articulation of very complex thoughts takes a very, very small amount of time.
Yeah, but
which
then like
I think is reflective of reality, because in reality we aren't articulating every single thing in our thoughts. A lot of it's instinctual, and so like explaining that into words takes more.
Yeah, it seems like it would like, yeah, there's less. I guess we just kind of assume that that's how fast thoughts happen.
It's like, you know, if I'm like, okay, I want to get a glass of water, that's just that. In my head, that is the only text, right? But my body is like, okay, well, I have to open the door, I have to go down the hall, I have to go down the stairs.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm pathfinding. I'm like, there's a cat in the way. I will move in a different direction so it doesn't swipe at me, because my cats are like that. And these are unconscious or subconscious thoughts that maybe in a text would have to be articulated if they're relevant.
I mean, even like when you're going on the little like
aren't.
walk to get to your water, like you have all that time to think, you know, but like you don't comment on the time that it takes, because you're just like, oh, I'm just going to the fridge, you know, all of this. But the thing is with Brian, everyone keeps mentioning all of these like long silences where like we're kind of involved with him, because he's like going through his thoughts and his flashbacks, and he's dealing with all this shit in his head. And then like Aisha or Taylor are like, you've been silent for a long time. I'm going to assume that you're thinking, but like, where's the rest of the conversation? I don't know. It's just, it's both like really interesting and in terms of like a writing, and then like also slightly amusing, because you like wouldn't think about, because I mean, it's just a little bit jarring, I guess.
Yeah.
Just because
I mean, I don't know if amusing is the word I would use.
I get amused about time things, but.
Okay.
No, but then it's also like a really good way of like describing what he's going through, and like how much he's really sitting there and like trying to process, and but then still like reliving it and all of this. Like he's really kind of stuck in his head, and we see that and we feel it. And the like dialogue, you know, acknowledging that, you know, acknowledges it to us as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, I get amused about funny things.
So just the fact that his thoughts take time while like Taylor's are basically instantaneous. Or timeless. They exist outside of any particular moment in time is interesting. So then during his interlude, we see Taylor from his perspective, and he's kind of like harshly honest in his mental description. So I'm going to read her approach. She wasn't in costume. It was odd, seeing her approach from a distance, observing her interrupted for over a longer span of time. She conveyed an eerie kind of confidence that he knew she didn't have at her core. Some of that was how she unflinchingly looked forward. She didn't react as the wind blew her hair across her face, didn't turn to look around the street as she crossed an intersection. And then, later, she somehow managed to be self-conscious and yet unaware of the way she held herself. The seeming fragility of her body was accented by the angles she seemed to settle into when she rested. Her wrist bent at a right angle as she picked at one of her cuticles with her thumbnail, her leg raised so her right foot could rest flat against the cabinet, her shoulders tilted forward a fraction. It was as if her skin didn't fit, and she couldn't stretch both arms or both legs out to their full lengths at the same time. And a little bit more. It made him think of a bird, or one of her insects, but he didn't feel he was being unflattering by thinking it. So, this is a very different perspective of Taylor than we've ever seen, right? I think in the beginning of the story, she actually was like pretty aware of her body. Like, you know, she was always afraid of how people were perceiving her. Yeah, she was like
hyper focused on it.
Yeah, and you know, this is where we get her own self descriptions, right? She's like, I used to she describes herself as looking kind of like a frog.
Yeah, with
like a long arms and a pudgy belly, and that's why she started running and stuff. And as we go through, I mean, this happens in the Slaughterhouse 9 arc too. You know, she gets more injuries, and she just continually tries to ignore her own body as much as possible.
Yeah. I don't think we really don't focus on it very much at all. And then, I mean, way later, she like just, I don't know, she takes herself out of her body so often with all of her bugs. I don't know. It's interesting to kind of like refocus the attention back like onto her like actual body.
this is also where, so related to this, we kind of see some thoughts that we never see with her, right? She articulates to Brian what it's like and what she feels about, being connected to all these bugs all the time. Yeah. So quoting, "It's sort of calming when you think about it. You realize how small you are in the grand scheme of things. We're not really the rulers of this planet. We're just tenants. And it's the small stuff, the bacteria and insects and the plant matter that really run it all." Going forward. I know I sound a little crazy when I say that, but really, you get a glimpse of how these bugs go about their lives, almost mechanical in how they follow their instincts. You see them breeding, eating, building nests, and dying, and you see how they saturate every aspect of our existence. Going forward again. "I guess it takes me out of myself when I think about it. Reminds me that we're only one part of this vast system. We're cogs in the universe in our own way. Seeing the little details makes me feel like the big problems aren't so personal. They aren't as overwhelming." And this is like a fascinating thought, and it's just interesting that Taylor, there's a couple times where she's like, I found refuge in my bugs, right? Mm-hmm. But she almost never articulates something like this, this notion that we're also small in the end.
Yeah, it's interesting how much she doesn't think about herself, I guess, or how much she thinks about the rest. I don't know, because we're not in those observations because what I was thinking, she knows these things inarticulately, right? Like the way that she thinks, maybe she doesn't speak of this to herself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or these observations are almost point of utterance of she has it in her head, but she hasn't articulated it until she has spoken.
Yeah, it's she has these feelings and half thoughts, right? But yeah, they don't come together into a coherent.
Yeah, piece.
Articulation of a feeling until right now.
Yeah. It's like when she was lying in the bed, after Leviathan, where she had her little, pyramid of cockroaches, that sort of thing of, in these moments where she feels powerless, she creates her own power by sitting in all these other bugs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, during this chapter and after, Brian and Taylor basically start having a relationship. So here they fall asleep on the couch together, and later Brian talks about how much he wants to kiss her when they're right before Dragon shows up, and in the next arc, they sleep together. Mm-hmm. So overall, it seems good for Brian. He does seem to feel better. Right?
Yeah.
That he has someone to lean on, if only a little. But it's not, a very romantic relationship. There's not a lot of, there is no, deep spark there.
No, there's no passion or whatever. There isn't that, headiness, I guess. That's usually, especially present in, teen romance. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. When teenagers, you fall head over heels for each other, and here
but I imagine,
it's very cold.
It's very pragmatic,
Yeah. Which is interesting because when Taylor was initially making her overtures, he was saying we were indicated that this was very analytical, but Brian is doing the exact same thing here as well, and it does also seem teenagery in another fashion of just this is what I'm supposed to do, so I need to do it. I guess.
Yeah,
because they don't know what it's supposed to feel like.
Her thoughts right before they sleep together, where she's just kind of okay, I guess this is what's gonna happen now. Yeah. I don't know. It just there isn't any sort of. It's just kind of they've decided,
Yeah.
But I guess this is this will be the stability or the comfort that we need. But I don't know. It's. I was thinking it's almost just as calculated as her other social interactions. Mm-hmm. Where it's she's very specific in the way that she kind of reasons through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very odd. It's not surprising, but it's just kind of strange, I guess.
Yeah. They also just haven't hung out in at least 2 weeks.
That's true. She's
when
been
the Slaughterhouse
busy,
Nine showed up,
doing other things.
Yeah. And even before then, I don't know.
Yeah, the amount of social exposure, I guess you could say. Because, they saw each other all the time when they were all living together in the apartment complex or whatever it was.
They definitely seemed more friendly with each other then, too.
Yeah, well, it was more, playful. Now they, have things, and she has goals that she has to, do, and he doesn't like her goals, and I don't know. It seems more complicated now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But at the very least, you know, I don't think Brian is like he's definitely not dealing with his trauma, right? He's kind of going into this relationship as like not he's not healing,
no,
right? But
no.
I think he's stabilizing, which I think is still important in its own way.
Yeah, there's just going to be a moment, I suspect, where he will have to like deal with it more.
Yeah.
You know, like he can't just like decide to be done with it and not like I don't know. That doesn't end well, you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. But the stability of it, I think, is perhaps good.
Yeah. So going forward, Skitter, we're going to start skipping over a lot of stuff as we go into more plot stuff.
Yeah,
but Skitter goes with Ballistic on a mission and tries to get some information from him, but pisses him off. This is actually, I think, one of the few times we see like her really, really fail at a social thing in a while.
Well, because she keeps like needling him, you know, like she doesn't have all of the facts, and I think that's what kind of messes it up.
Yeah, she makes fun of him and then is like, or not makes fun, but like needles him and is surprised that he ends up not liking her.
Skitter.
And so then she talks to Parian and Flechette, trying to talk to Parian, but then Flechette stabs her, which is such a terrifying. That's permanent damage.
Yeah, I know.
You know, like even if she was arrested, like there's now permanently metal attached to the bone.
Yeah, because they don't get all of it out, right? It like some of it stays in her body.
Yeah.
Terrible.
I'm just saying, even if she was arrested, that's still like wrong.
Yeah.
You know, like even a broken arm, you fix that, right? You get a splint.
Yeah.
But this is like you'd have to remove.
You're really stuck.
I
don't know, but also Flechette is like, I must protect Parian. You know.
Yeah. Yes, that's fair. Yes. The lady said no. Oof, that's so good. It's such a good line. So she tries to recruit Parian and then gets increasingly frustrated that people don't understand that this time, when she says something almost unbelievable to get out of a situation, it's different and she's not lying like all the times that she lied.
Oh my gosh. There's also like a kind of a tendency for her to like, whenever she's trying to recruit people, to like offer money as like a way to create trust, you know? Like it's like this display, like, or like even just to create like temporary trust or something like that. Like she turns to like these different ways to kind of like manipulate, and it's still is almost like a manipulation, you know? And like
because it's like she earned the money, sure, but it's not like something that she has attachment to, right? So she can literally quite easily afford to do these large displays of generosity, right? Just to show, and the way she's trying to convey, see, I really do care about this because I'm doing this big sacrifice, and she does do a little bit, right? There's a part where she's like, well, I made sure to do an amount that actually would probably hurt me in my long-term goals a little bit because to make it feel significant, but it's not. It's her $200,000 is not the same feeling at all as anyone else's $200,000. It's probably it would be the same amount of money if like the same amount of feeling if I give someone like a couple hundred, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's also like she's earned the money like doing Coil's bidding.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. It seems like money that would not create trust. And I don't know, she's just like, she keeps doing all these gambles and then she like expects people to like still believe that she's okay. I don't know. It's just her version of herself as a parahuman is not what everyone else has like decided based on her actions. And she like gets mad when people don't see that those are two different people.
Yeah, her argument here essentially boils down to like the labels of hero and villain don't mean much because, you know, some heroes are villainous, like Arms Master, who's more villainous than her, which, you know, debatable, but sure, yeah. But that said, Taylor, you're like, she's like, being a villain doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a bad person. Sure. However, it does mean, looking at your past actions does mean that you do hurt people, that you do bad things, and then perhaps deserve to go to jail for it. Like, just even before Leviathan, she does rob a bank and terrorize people.
That's very true. She does a lot of like torture and like I mean, she hurt Lung really bad, and I mean, she like carved his eyes out. I don't know, just.
And now, I think she wouldn't accept like actions against other villains as a sign that she's a bad person, because heroes do that too, right?
I guess, but like she's still like her actions are still like very like a lot. They're a lot, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So my point here basically, she's saying, why do you treat me like a villain, right? Just because I'm a villain doesn't mean I'm a bad person, right? But like she has done things that like it wouldn't a reasonable person might view as evil, and in her mind everything's justified because she's doing this for Dinah. And even if that's again debatable, other people don't know that. How are they?
Yeah, they don't know her motivations. Like I feel like that's a recurring theme of like the heroes of wondering what these ulterior motivations are for Skitter.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. They just and then when she tries to like explain, she doesn't fully explain, and so it just gets kind of mixed up.
Yeah. So, her internal motivations, might be good, but like, no one knows them. So how else are they supposed to judge you, Skitter, except for what are the things that you do?
Yeah.
So, but Perrin eventually agrees to some sort of alliance, although she feels that she's selling her soul for it. So she agrees to a quasi-alliance, which Coyle isn't happy about, but that conversation occurs while Skitter is having surgery to move a metal spike in her bones.
Yeah.
So,
just my god, this whole like, and it's even more so. It's like Perrin, and then also she's getting this surgery with only local anesthetic. Like it's not even, and she's like awake and she's doing all these things at the same time, and then she's also like talking to other people with her swarm people at the same time. It's just there's so much happening. And it's like I couldn't even process it when I was reading it. But there's just I just can't even imagine that amount of like sensory information, like both being like brought to me, but then also like having to respond. I don't know. It's just so much.
Yeah. I think this is also the part where she is trying to have multiple conversations at the same time with her clones.
Yeah.
Which is just the fact that she attempts that, and she seems frustrated that she can't do it. It's just like, that is something that is completely inhumanly impossible.
Yeah,
I mean, you could switch back and forth if you're like texting, but you cannot. No one has two mouths.
That's just, it just sounds so very exhausting.
That's true.
Like how much that she's trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's also a note here with Sierra where Bryce kind of pokes at her, and then Sierra's like, do not do that.
Yeah, she like gets really worried.
She's terrifying.
And then it's almost, I don't know, it was just such kind of like a peculiar interaction, because like we're in Taylor's head, right? And then she sees Sierra being like worried about this, of like worried that her boss is like going to be terrifying, when provoked. And then Taylor just kind of like dismisses it, like, oh, you think that because like the ABB members that I tortured, but like that was just a bit of mortal terror, like that's not that big deal. I don't know, she had this whole big to-do beforehand about how Fletchett and Perrin weren't seeing her like that they saw her as a villain, and then she's like, oh, it's it's mortal terror, it doesn't matter. Like I feel like she like
actually
has
gonna die.
Yeah, like
they just thought that they were. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just totally different mentalities almost that she has.
Yeah, I mean, just yesterday or recently, basically Barker does the supernatural equivalent of spitting in someone's face, right?
Yes. Oh yeah, that whole interaction
she leaves him writhing on the floor for 30 minutes.
Like
so.
Also, like his power. He like when he says like crude words, is that what, or like foul language, is that how it works?
I think it's like any word or sound, but like,
okay, because I wasn't sure.
It probably has like some kind of emotional like component where like, if it's easier to say a crude word with more emphasis and emotion than another word. Like try to say bubbles pissed off. It's really difficult. So
I can't even say it.
You can do it yourself in your own home. Yes.
Oh, okay, because there was the whole fight where I think he's there with the very end with when Bitch is like needing help and all of that.
Yes.
I just in the background I imagined him like just shouting expletives which made it like really great. But then I wasn't
Yeah.
sure if that was like actually what was happening or not.
I think that works. Yeah. I think if it's not happening, it might as well be.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Anyways, okay.
Yeah. So moving forward, then we have Alexandra's interlude. So another, actually, I should probably just stop saying this because every interlude just ends up having so much now.
Yeah, they're really packed.
Even the earlier interludes did too, but each of those things were like less, like they feel less important. Like with Purity, right? There was. The main contention there is her being a Nazi and considering herself a good person.
Yeah,
and that's kind of
they were
the
more
entire
like
deal going on.
Looking with the ones earlier, like it was more of like us looking into other people's heads, but then now it's like building background and kind of developing things that we'll be able to see later on, and like you know what I mean. Like they're so packed full of things that we need to know.
At the same time that.
Yeah, at the same time.
We are also seeing a character's head at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's why it feels so packed, is because both of those things are happening.
So here we see, a bit about Cauldron. We see how they recruit their test subjects, which Alexandra was. She was someone on that was terminally ill, and there's so much drama there. But we can't go into the details because we don't have time. But
Yes.
So Alexandra basically becomes a founding member of both the Triumvirate and the PRT. So she's the leader of both now, which is really scary. That Cauldron has an operative controlling both of those.
Because those were like her big plans to make the PRT and all of that.
Yeah. So it really is a worldwide conspiracy. And we see the other places that Cauldron is involved in. We see a slow decline into moral of just the line of morality, keeps getting extended.
Yes.
And there's that part where the Siberian is roaming around and Dr. Mother's like, oh, it'll be good because more people will join the Protectorate. And
just.
I mean, we've got Worm pointed it out where like she's like, oh, just kidding. I don't know what's wrong with me. But they also don't go after the Siberian. So
yeah, like I don't know. You can like watch the descent. It's terrifying. But it's also like it's almost like it's not a descent. It's just slowly being more revealed to Alexandria of like her understanding of what Cauldron is.
Well, I think it also is Alexandria's own,
her own
line is moving.
Yeah,
I think
that's true.
Because she becomes more and more okay with things, where she felt like she drew lines before and now she doesn't. This is also so the first kind of important thing here is that I want to talk about is just the world building thing of just both of, well, actually basically almost all the like big authorities that we've seen in the story, right? PRT, the Protectorate, and Coil are all somewhat, at least, controlled or involved with Cauldron.
Yeah, that's very true. They're all kind of like wrapped up in it.
Yeah, and so another angle on this. So Coil is his plan that comes to fruition in Arc 16 before he's executed is trying to become like Alexandra, where he's a parahuman pretending to be a human, so that he can do both.
Yeah.
Except he's, I guess, starting from a villainous side.
Yeah, but so he was a parahuman when he was working with we see in the like later interlude of the PRT, like
no, I think so. In the aftermath, he says that he didn't trigger, and then I'm pretty sure in his own interlude, and we kind of just forgot about it. He says that he bought his power.
We should reread that one. Oh, I will make a note of that. Now, knowing all that I know about him.
Right. But yeah, it just, every single authority, even the ones that are, heroic and doing good, are controlled by this.
Everybody who, like, seemingly who is
force.
Even by themselves are, like, still attached. Because, like, even the 9, I mean, they're not really, like, a fancy authority, but, like, they have people attached to, like, Cauldron is everywhere.
Yes. Tendrils. And, Triumph also bought his powers, among others.
Yeah, there were so many of the heroes that I feel like I wasn't expecting that when we first heard of Cauldron, because, like, mysterious, hallway in the wherever. I don't know. It just seems sketchy. But then all these people are like, oh yeah, we just kind of got it. I don't know.
And I wonder how many of them know that there are others, you know? Like, I'm certain that Battery and Triumph did not know that they both were Cauldron Capes.
Intriguing. Also, this is when we learn about, or when we first mention the Terminus Project, which doesn't have a lot of detail, but I'm very intrigued about it.
It does have an interesting title, yeah.
Because it seems like it could be important.
Yeah. So a different thing, this is also where we get a glimpse of the third Endbringer, although it's actually the first, Behemoth. The hero killer.
Yes, Behemoth. Very terrifying.
Yes. So, very, very terrifying. Like, that part is written in true, like, the realization of horror, right? A dawning horror.
Yeah.
It just, people around her just getting demolished.
It's just, I don't know. But it's also at the same time, I don't know. All of the, like, Endbringers to me are so fascinating. Mm-hmm. They're so, just because, I don't know, just like the, like, large, and even like, I don't know, were they people beforehand? And they became these Endbringers? Like, what is the deal there? I don't know.
What is their dealio? Yeah. So, moving on, as we are currently halfway through Arc 15, and we have 2 giant arcs to get through. This is where the big action of this arc happens. Skitter goes on a mission to threaten the mayor. She's also under the understanding that Coil is going to try to kill her during this, so she's very tense and thinking about that the whole time. It goes not well.
No.
She actually kind of has to do it completely by herself, which is kind of crazy. Where there's 2 capes there, Triumph and Prism, which is a very cool fight scene. But
because they didn't anticipate them being there.
Yes. Didn't anticipate either. So she gets Triumph into anaphylactic shock and lets him get within seconds of dying, just to further threaten the mayor. And the mayor drops to his knees, saying, "He's my boy," and it's really it affects Taylor even in the moment.
Yeah.
But she accomplishes the mission, and Coil doesn't kill her here, revealing that Tattletale, her power is not reliable in that. So yeah, it's a pretty
because I feel like
horrible thing she does here.
Her power kind of like can be contradicted by Coil. Like he,
we're revealed. They
here that get, like, back and forth. But it's also, even like before the whole like terrible thing that she does and what happens and how she like traumatizes little girls and all of this, and before that she's like, when she knows she's going to like be killed by Coil, that she might be killed, she's very systematic in her like preparations for her like possible death, where she's like setting up all these things, which I guess is like logical or whatever, but it seems like a very cold way to like handle death, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then she like goes in and very like intensely tortures both Triumph, but then also the mayor, because it's like his kid. But yeah, I don't know. Just it seems like this you can't really get past it. Like you can't rationalize your way around this.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. So in the aftermath, she's running in the forest, right? And she tries to blame the mayor, and she can't. So she starts off this run, thinking a lot about or struggling to justify this to herself. And then she starts thinking about, running through the forest and, the bugs giving her topographic sense, and the running just feels supernatural and great. And by the end of it, she's just kind of focused on the running and how good it feels.
Becomes purely physical.
Yeah, and she basically fantasizes about how she kind of wants to do this for a long time, this automatic feeling of running, kind of losing herself in this unconscious movement. So I just want to point out, she literally feels better running away from her problems. Yeah. That's literally what is happening here.
It's very amusing how literal she is in that sense.
Yeah.
But it felt, there was 2 particular things that it felt to me, this moment of running, one of them was that like it becomes kind of like Legend's like unthinking, you know, during flight, where it's like just like the simplicity of movement, you know, where she like she can like put out or like put off dealing with anything, where she can just focus on what is happening, you know, so her like mind is kind of like offline. But then additionally, also like this run to me, it felt also kind of like that lap that like Olympic swimmers take after they've like gone really fast and they have like the lactic acid or whatever that is in their body that like, you know, they gotta like get rid of it, you know, but it like for her, she has like that level of like fear and like anxiety and like paranoia of that has been building this whole time, and she thought she was going to die during this mission, but then she didn't. But then at the same time, she like let that, you know, kind of prevent her from like I guess it like lowered her like, you know, like inhibitions of like allowing herself to go further than she usually would. And I feel like all of that has kind of like been kind of like, you know, kind of sticking her in her body, and then like this run kind of like gives her a moment to like kind of flesh everything out, so that she can like kind of process it later. Yeah. Not that she does fully process it, but you know.
No. So yeah, related to that, afterwards she decides to go to her dad, right? And it's almost like she gets there. She seems almost like in a fugue. Right? She goes there. She exchanges a very limited amount lines of dialogue, and she reads some pamphlets about her. Her dad says that she's changed and, you know, looks more confident, and she says that, you know, she maybe hasn't changed for the better, right?
Yeah.
And then she leaves.
It's very abrupt.
After having a single cup of tea. So.
Yeah. Well, a lot of her interactions with her dad recently have been very abrupt. And I feel like this, she was thinking about it, like, as she was, like, running, where she's, like, where to seek, like, the validation or, like, reassurance or whatever she was looking for. And she, like, I feel like she really only needed a moment to kind of get a glimpse of, like, her, like, past home, like, something of comfort that is, like, detached from who she has become. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I feel like after she had that, she was kind of like, no, I can't stay here.
Yeah. I think she has this guilt about, you know, Triumph and his father. And I think this is just, like, her way of very quickly getting a resolution about that.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, I heard a dad. I will go see a dad now.
Yeah.
And now everything's better because I thought of my dad. But she didn't really.
Yeah,
and also he's struggling, too.
Yeah,
and she's not
like,
doing anything for him.
He has to deal with, like, all of the nutrition and all of this and, like, the aftermath of Shatterbird and all of this. I don't know.
Yeah.
He seems to... And she just kind of, like, leaves.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I really like the way that the pamphlet describes her. It's this kind of shocking outside view. And I think I remember, you know, the first time I read it where... I read this when I was 14, just for the record. I read Worm when I was 14. You know, I think even then I was like, huh, I mean, they're totally getting her wrong, but like, also, it's not entirely wrong.
Yeah, I mean, from the perspective of the, like, you know, people who are writing these texts, right, who are distributing these, you know, informational, rhetorical, I would say even, these texts that are being, you know, sent out to the public. I think what she has presented of herself, of her actions, like, it's accurate representation, I guess.
Yeah, she is unpredictable and dangerous.
That's very true.
And, like, even if she doesn't feel unpredictable, if people can't predict you,
like,
you are unpredictable.
And even in this, like, it's laid bare, like, how much nobody knows her motivations. You know, like, there's apparent kindness, you know, all of this, like, unknown ulterior motives, like, that's true. Like, nobody knows that, you know? And she, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think this is, like, the very, like, clear kind of, like, dichotomy of, like, her expectations of what people should see and what they actually see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then we get to Triumph's Interlude, kind of immediately seeing an aftermath, which is not really as bad as you know, we think, as he recovers fairly well and pretty quickly.
He's like up and about, right? Which, you know, that's better than other people have been.
Yes. But we still see the other consequence is that there's a split in the Brockton Bay heroes over whether or not to go aggressive and retaliatory because they attacked his family and go outside the rules. And another side saying that they, have to go within the rules because it's vigilantism to do that, and there's consequences and whatnot. But they're tired of losing. Vista is tired of losing people.
Yeah.
So I think what's significant here is that while Triumph is, he feels fine, and it was his family. Like, it stirs a ton of feelings in the rest of the heroes, right? Assault thinking about Battery, Vista thinking about all the people's they've lost, and no one was lost here, right?
But it's like that threat, almost, I guess, because a lot of them have vulnerable families.
Yeah,
they're kind of like they have been worried about. And we saw their preoccupation with that in their interlude. Their reaction, I think, is totally understandable.
Yeah. The other thing that is significant is that, right, Triumph is a cauldron cape, and he kind of grew up really privileged too, right? His dad is the mayor, among other things, and I do wonder if he owes cauldron favors himself or his dad does. I'm sure one or both of those things is true, but yeah.
Yeah, he may be acting in that and not know, like, if his dad is the one telling him what to do, and he may, like, inadvertently be fulfilling whatever their wishes are.
Yeah. We'll revisit the back and forth of the morality of things later on, and when we talk about Define and Dragon during Define's interlude. But of course, this is also when we get introduced to them. But let's move on for now. Okay. Let's talk about the vigilante justice. During that one, because I think it's kind of all tied together.
Yeah, I think so. It's like a continued conversation.
Yeah. So now we begin arc 16. It only took us an hour 20 minutes to get through arc 15. So let's see how this goes. This is actually a very, very long arc. It's like 100,000 words.
It is. It is quite long.
And it's we've got Worm comments on this, but I think it's pretty noticeable is that this kind of feels an arc in two parts. There's the dragon part, and then there's the coil part. So. So this is the arc in which the dragon suits are wrecked and coil is taken out. So we start off with the dragon suits appearing. The first of the suits crashes this neighborhood barbecue, and Brian and Gru escape and meet up with the rest of the Undersiders and Travelers. They basically pledge and work with Coil to take down all of these suits. Coil promises to free Dinah after this is over.
Yeah.
Also later we hear that Taylor's people fought back against the drone here, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, it seems like hers also have a lot of, like, I don't know, it seems like her section of the city, I feel like they have a lot more, like, resources, I guess.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't know if it's like loyalty.
Yeah, they're not having barbecues anywhere else.
Yeah.
And so here, of course, Taylor is still engaging in that double think, actively planning to take down Coil, knowing that Coil wants to kill her. Coil's totally going to give up Dinah after this.
Yeah, like, it's so confusing to me. I mean, I understand that she, like, is kind of stuck in this, like, boat, but I don't know. I don't know why she hasn't, like, broken out of that. I guess maybe I'm just, like, thinking about this differently or, like, from a different perspective, but it just, why does she keep asking about Dinah, like, outright? You know what I mean? Like, she knows all of this is happening. Like, she knows all these plots and, like, but she's still, is directly, speaking to him about it, like, or, like, asking him. I don't know. Maybe I'm just, like, been watching too many, like, political dramas or, like, you know, these kinds of, like, spy movies or something, but I feel like she, like, I feel like she should stop asking him things, you know?
Sure.
And, like, just kind of plan in her own secret places. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or, like, ask him in a roundabout way. Just, like, the direct approach is just very confusing to me.
I think so, too. So this is the moment where Taylor takes the lead, right? And the Undersiders and Travelers begin by assaulting the PRT headquarters. So, of course, they do the most aggressive thing when Taylor's in charge.
Yeah, of course.
And here they're kind of ruthless, and especially Taylor, where first Shadowbird shatters all the glass in the PRT headquarters again, and I just mostly to break computers and stuff, I think is the point. But it just makes me wonder, like, I hope no one was wearing glasses here, because
also, like,
goddamn,
is there any glass left in the city?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure.
After she like shattered everything first.
Yeah. So here also, Taylor herself is being pretty ruthless. She gets teleported among the heroes, and like almost the first thing she does is smack sounds not enough violent of a word, but hits Vista across the base of her nose.
That's like
in both directions. I mean, like,
I
with
understand
her baton,
that she's
with
like
a metal baton,
a hero or whatever, and you have your whole plan, but like she's
12 years old.
She's a kid. And you're all worried. Like I don't.
Taylor.
She's like, it's so confusing.
I'm just saying. In real life, what do we call when a 16-year-old hits a 12-year-old in the face? A bully. Just saying. But okay, so she hits Vista like that, and then the other tactic is basically repeatedly jumping out of the window so that she can get swapped with heroes who will then fall the rest of the distance. It's just
it's terrible.
So much.
Like, and I feel like it's notable too that like it's not her adapting to the situation and feeling like she needs to be more aggressive because her previous tactic is not working. Like these are like planned things, like these are like deliberately and increasingly violent in order for whatever she needs to get done, like I don't know, she just, and it's also, and I feel like maybe it's just because we see the wards so often in the aftermath of an attack by her or by the Undersiders, but like I feel like they're always much worse for wear. Like every time that they see her, like there was some other, like when we were looking at them and they, you could see the effects of like all the insect bites, through their clothes, and I don't know.
Is this the fight where, during this arc, I think this might be the fight where she deliberately puts her capsaicin-laced bugs into like people's genitals and like lower orifices on purpose.
Oh,
it's one thing to do that with the face. It's already like such a violent thing.
She did that to Triumph, I think. Didn't she?
Yeah, that might have been it. But it's just like it's something that she didn't do with Lung at the beginning of the story because she thought it was gross. But it's just like it just seems wrong to do that.
It just seems so.
And it's a burning
painful.
too. It's a chemical attack. Yeah, it's just like hitting someone in the genitals is always like the low blow, right? It's a dirty move, but this seems like even worse because it's not like something to take the wind out of them or whatever. It's a chemical attack
like it's
on the most sensitive parts of your body. Yeah, it's
just so violent for what? Like there's no reason to be that violent,
Yeah. There's what did you want to bring up here? I think this is the moment where there was something you wanted to bring up earlier.
It's the note. It's the note language.
Oh yeah,
that Taylor puts.
Yeah, so
that, like Taylor has Imp put in her hair, but then she like forgets about it, and then I don't know. Anytime the Imp is like around, I keep forgetting about the effects because Taylor keeps. I don't know. I get all mixed up.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, what is this temporal effect? But it was really just Imp, leaving like little notes in Taylor's like note language. I mean, it doesn't really have anything to do with anything else, but it was something to note, I think.
Yeah.
But I guess it kind of feeds into like her authority, and like she kind of like has all these different pieces that need to be happening, but I don't know. It was just kind of a funny little thing.
I thought it was pretty interesting as well. Yeah. So then the next thing is we have the Prt Squad Interlude. Just before, we see Pago again. So this was actually one of my favorite interludes. This is when they, go and attack, go into Nilbog's territory that first time. It is horrifying, terrifying, and awesome. I think this might be where we've got Worm first coins horror-awesome. Something that's horribly term. Awesome in its horror. Yeah. When I Googled it, the only results were we've got Worm, for the record.
Well, it really like, it embodies the term awesome in the way that awesome is like, has been previously defined and not as like a colloquial, and like the lit or, boss or whatever those
full
are.
Of awe. Yeah.
Because it is like he's very, but it's also at the same time, Nilbog is just like a man and he has a name,
Yeah.
But then what he's doing is very like, I wrote Titanus, you know, like the, not even like a Greek god, but like the Titans, you know, just this very like, I don't know, like, primordial almost. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the vision of him was like, it really lived up to expectations, you know, that was like in my head. I liked it.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know what Nilbog was like in my, like, cause he's mentioned like way early on when we're talking about,
as like a special thing.
Cops and Robbers, I think, in that whole discussion. So
Yeah.
like way early on. But it just sounded like it had, you know, Nilbog is such a wonderful name, you know, so I was really like excited to see what it was.
Yes. So during this, you know, there's a pretty classic, like, you know, military squad going and getting attacked by aliens. It's extremely, it is that genre, and just like takes the violence to an even higher extreme, because it's like these are all expendable characters, right? Yeah. Like they are not the protagonists of the story. They are just they're characters in the story. So they get, you know, picked off one by one, with only 2 survivors. Pigou, who now has her kidneys destroyed and needs dialysis, and Thomas Calvert.
Yes. Pigou.
And I find it significant that the entire town, which is 5,000 people, so it's a small town, but it's not that small. Like, I mean, anyway, 5,000 people.
That's a relatively small town, but not. I mean, it's not like
I guess
500 or whatever.
Yeah, and during the fight, the Capes abandon the humans, which is also really interesting. Something significant in this chapter is that the writing is pretty. It feels different, in a different style than the rest of Worm. It's a little blurrier or vague. We don't see people's faces as much. Is what it feels like. You know, it's a whole squad of people that we don't really know, and so we're like less attached. And I think that adds to the scariness of it, because just the town and everything is just a little bit darker. It's harder to see the details, and we only see the details as the squad members reveal them. Yeah. And I think we're in a third person limited. We do see some thoughts, but it's pretty damn limited.
Yeah, because we also
it's
keep
mostly
like
in this kind of objective view.
So we don't have that much time to like linger in their own individual, you know, identity and thought.
Right.
Yeah. And I feel like also because we are kind of set up in that very like limited way, the limited visibility, I guess. It's very much, you know, where we see the like glimpses of the monster sort of thing. You know, the horror of like anticipation before we see Nilbog and like all of his monstrous creations like in their totality, you know?
Yeah.
Like makes it even worse, because it's like, you know, we don't have everything, so we like fill it in our heads. Yeah,
we spend some time just increasing the tension and the creepiness, right? With first all the silence and the dark, and just the abandonment, and then we see, you know, that first monster, and it's already horrible, but it's dealt with pretty easily. When it dies, I'm pretty sure in its bag, half dissolved bodies spill out, right?
Yeah. Oh, so fascinating, but also terrible. You know. Yes. But I don't know. It really like sits in that kind of like I mean, not beauty. It's not beauty, but like the like monstrous to, you know, and terror to the, you know, this like upper limit, I guess. But I don't know, just kind of like that.
And then we get worse from there. It's after we see the half dissolved bodies that things start revealing themselves.
Yes.
Yeah. After the raid, Imp captured Pigou, and we talked to her. So there's kind of a small debate about torturing her, which it's like shut down like a couple, or it seems to be resolved a couple times, and then it comes back up. Yeah. But Pigou speaks, and she gets under everyone's skin and makes Taylor doubt herself, and honestly is kind of a total badass here. And she has the thing. She points out the irony itself, right? That they need to free her by the end of the day, unless if they want to become monsters, because she needs to be on dialysis.
Yeah, it's almost like she
And
built. She has like a dead man switch like already built into her body. You know.
Yeah, and she's the one that points out the metaphorical the dramatic irony of the very thing that makes her, a weak human is the thing that's gonna defeat them here.
Yeah.
So actually, this echoes the when Taylor fights the Azazel later of exploiting the honor code of your enemy to win. Yeah.
Pigo.
So I'm gonna read some of her quotes of what she talks about to Taylor. When you subtract the blood you've spilled and the pain you've caused, have you really done that much more, Skitter? That's oversimplifying, obviously. Right and wrong aren't a matter of adding the good deeds and subtracting the bad. And later, where do you draw the line? When do you start taking responsibility? Or will you explain away every evil you've done and count only the actions you want? And Taylor thinks about it. I could have protested, argued that I did take the blame for some things. I did blame myself for Dinah, for not seeing the bigger picture, for acting when I'd known Coyle needed a distraction for something bigger. But like with that particular train of thought, it's like that is what she's talking about.
Yeah.
That's not every evil, but it's very specific ones.
Yeah, Taylor definitely picks particular things to dwell on, so she doesn't have to think about everything else. Yeah.
Yeah. So Pigot kind of really gets her there, and not to mention making Taylor want to question Tattletale, and she's doing this kind of she's doing to Tattletale what Tattletale does to enemies, bringing up information that can't be totally ignored to create rifts. Where we saw this with when they were talking to the Nazis, but Pigot brings up Lisa's old name. And Taylor's like, what? And they do end up having to talk about it. So it's interesting that even though they've seen the tactic employed, it's an unresistible tactic.
Yeah, they're kind of caught in their own trap, I suppose. Yeah. This scene actually, it definitely changed my opinion of Pigot before, because I was kind of like, oh, she's like this paper pusher trying to deal with all of the public, but then she also she spent a huge amount of time with, dealing with parahumans and needing to be able to hold her own to kind of create her own way to interact with them and kind of hold power over them, because she can't, because she doesn't have that power in a physical fight, she can't put her power up against another because she doesn't have one, and so she has to intake as much, knowledge and tactics, I guess you could say, of being able to peel away all those rationalizations for Taylor and all those things that they don't tell to each other or tell to themselves, because she's already faced herself, and she's not afraid to look, but then and she's also not afraid to make others look at her and also at at themselves, I don't know, I feel that it almost has the same amount of not brevity, but the opposite of gravity. I don't know.
Or weight.
Yeah, weight.
Even.
As what Tattletale can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then they fight all the suits. Rachel versus the regenerating one, right? They were paired not just against people's powers, but against mentalities, which is interesting. And eventually they fight the Azazel, right, which is supposed to be the top-notch, newest one. And the way Taylor defeats it is by exploiting its program to not hurt humans. And that's what ends up getting destroyed. And so 3 whole suits get destroyed when they were supposed to, after Brockton Bay, fight the 9.
Yeah, but they're just kind of operating by themselves at this point, right? Because Dragon's not actively kind of watching over them. Yeah,
they have her new child AIs.
Yeah. Before we get into the larger stratospheric, I guess, discussion about how Taylor kind of addresses this, there's this moment of back and forth between Rachel and Taylor that we mentioned before too, but it was just so immediate, I think, to the bringing up of how fast Rachel expects Skitter to know what to do. That she's she's created a precedent, I think, of taking charge even in moments when she like hasn't been exclusively given that power. That, I don't know, it's such a change from like having to kind of wrest control or like convince people to listen. Is that Rachel just like immediately listens.
Rachel's actively looking for guidance.
Yeah.
I love that moment where she goes, basically saying, oh, great, now you're here. No, we can't run away. You just come up with your plans, and then we'll do it, and then we'll defeat it, because that's what we always do.
Yeah, I don't know, it's funny. There's so much precedent set upon it. But, yeah.
Yeah. So, to the Azazel, what really gets me here is that, what makes the Undersiders win in that moment, although for the most part it's actually Tattletale going to the Dragon Slayers and, you know, doing all the background stuff, but that's when Taylor's not there, so, you know. The victory that we feel is her outsmarting the Azazel, and it's done. So there's just something really interesting about how it's not just that the suits held back and they weren't strong enough because they were non-lethal to take out the Undersiders. They actually, even with non-lethal measures, they captured Taylor, right? But Taylor wins here exclusively because of the like honor code of the suit, not because it was not because it wasn't strong enough, because it was strong enough, but doing it in a way that I think it's just something about how like it was an exploit rather than a normal like just force against force win. That makes it even more like damaging to that honor code. Yeah, because it makes the code like into a tool, you know, to like be bent and like, you know, moved around. And a total like liability. So what I'm getting at here, and I don't know why I'm having such trouble articulating it, but I was having trouble articulating it when I was writing it too, is that, you know, if one side continually exploits the gentleness or non-lethality of the other side, that obviously incentivizes the other side even more to get rid of that gentleness. So by exploiting the Azazel's, you know, idea of to not harm humans, you really... Taylor really incentivizes Dragon to just really loosen that restriction and make it so like it's okay with people dying, or at least a risk of people dying. It seems like something that should not be messed with, you know? But then it's also like that's what she's been messing with this whole time, like within herself. Is that she's slowly been kind of chipping that away, you know, or like letting other people chip it away, or like letting the circumstances kind of dictate how she responds, how much she relies upon that. That's kind of it. That's what got me thinking about like this specific moment, and like your articulation of it got me thinking about what Jack, you know, kind of made her think about with the miasma, where he was asking her to directly kill, right? And then she refused in that moment, but also kind of has that in the back of her mind to sort of, you know, deal with, and she hasn't, you know. And then, you know, throughout the visit of the Nine, and then like throughout both of these arcs, she's kind of been forced to like increase, or not even been forced, she has been increasing her ruthlessness, you know, to kind of like match. And then like she hasn't stopped herself from continuing down that path of kind of what Jack set her up to do, you know. And I mean, it's not directly attached to him, I think, but it's the way that he spoke to Panacea, and like that sort of his rhetoric, I think, has still sort of like been in her head, you know, that like has been sort of setting her up to be able to respond the way that she has, you know what I mean? Where it's like almost like a delayed reaction. Which I guess is like what Jack does, you know. He like sets it up so that you know. It reminds me of the guided missile terminology with the Seamerg. It's the I mean, obviously Jack was not, so it wasn't a specific plan. Like, I mean, he doesn't know that that's you know, perhaps going to happen, but he did push that ball to get it rolling. And I mean, it worked with Amy, right? That's true. That's very true. I mean, we don't know what would have happened if he hadn't talked to her, but he did talk to her, and we see what happened. Yeah. So in the aftermath of winning against Dragon, they celebrate, and Brian and Taylor have some close conversation, and they sleep together. And Brian, I think here is just a little bit vulnerable with her, but not very much at all.
Yeah, I mean, he's enough to kind of like begin to open himself up, you know, like, and it's also like, it's very difficult, I think, to sort of unlearn those habits and ways of thought, when one has been...
And kind of survival mechanisms.
Yeah, and so like, in this moment, he's already vulnerable, he's already been vulnerable, and I think, you know, kind of in his, you know, figuring out of himself and like how to address himself in this like mentality of wanting to be vulnerable enough to kind of be okay. I think he's at least like working on it, I guess, you know? Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're confounding to me.
So they are confounding. I hope they do good.
Yeah, I hope it works out.
Yes. So next we have the Defiance Interlude, which is such a great chapter. I don't know. I really like this one. Defiant kind of is running through a crime scene with the Slaughterhouse 9 worm and talking to... he talks to this woman, and with Dragon's help is able to reassure her. And so he's like a bit bumbling internally, socially, but with Dragon helping him, he's actually... He comes off pretty well. And throughout this thing, we really... He's actually very likable, I think.
Yeah. Well, they both course correct each other, you know?
Yeah. And it seems that they have, you know, actually a pretty meaningful relationship. They're very, very close. They are... Dragon is basically in his body, more or less, and Defiant is in her brain, more or less.
They're really physically and mentally
intertwined.
They're so close, you know, and they're both like, they're like intense enough with each other, like that. I feel like they complement each other, you know. I don't know quite how to articulate it, but they seem to like sort of fit as like puzzle pieces, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that Dragon is so much more socially capable than he is, and she's the non-human.
Yeah. I mean, but also I suppose she has like a lot of time to kind of observe and, you know, learn, I guess, how to interact socially and like how people respond and like what they expect and all of this, you know. I feel like he's prioritized other things over that, you know.
Yeah. So even though he's getting more likable, there's still this notion here where he would, given the same information, he would do everything over again, except he wouldn't get caught, basically.
Yes. So he has no remorse over what he did. Yeah.
He doesn't seem to fully understand like why it was wrong.
Yeah.
And so he is dodging justice, and so this is the thing that we skipped over before with Triumph, right? He's dodging justice, but everyone is fine with it because he's useful.
Yes. Very, I mean, it's not quite, it's not unheard of, this mentality, specifically like this like governmental response to someone who has not earned or who has not faced the consequences of their actions, but still remains, still has information that could be used, you know? Which is specifically in my head, I'm thinking about like the Nazi scientists, they're like the German scientists they brought over in the 50s. In America, and they were like, I mean, we don't agree with you, but like, you have this knowledge and we're going to use it. You know, like, I don't know. I feel like there's a tendency to prioritize, knowledge over and action, knowledge and action over dealing with particular people, you know, like this whole like greater good sort of thing, you know, where they're like, oh, well, he has the capability of dealing with a 9. So we're going to like look past what he did before.
Yeah, and it's interesting how it's like, I mean, he's kind of doing a community service, right? He is
that's true.
Dedicating himself to do the thing. However, would he not do that normally? Like, I think without it's hard to answer that question without you know, the traumatic experience he had with Mannequin.
Yeah, that's true.
And you know, he's dedicating himself totally to defeating the 9. I don't know if he would have done that without the 9.
I feel like...
But he's sort of disavowing the glory. That's the main thing that he would want, right? If he
That's true.
wasn't in trouble.
Yeah.
But
because that was kind of what he was seeking before.
Yeah. But he's still, he's still getting to be a parahuman, and that's what he wants to do.
Oh, that was what I was going to say. There's also like the whole added bit of like people like don't know what he did. Like there's only like a certain amount of people that do. Like with like Fletchette. Like Fletchette had no idea about any of it when when Taylor was talking with her, and it's just I don't know. The consequences that I don't know. He's just kind of like going about free, and yes, he's being like watched and all of this, but like I mean, his wrong hasn't even been like publicly stated. I guess I don't know. I feel like they've given him too much rope.
Yeah. So to go back a bit to the Trance Interlude, there's this during that interlude especially, but continuing in irrelevancy now is just this repeated back and forth about ends justifying means and like the acceptability of that in according to the heroes, right? So triumph, right, is a cauldron cape, right? So that's a shady means to an end, right? And then he goes to this debate between them where they want to do vigilante justice, which kind of would be a sort of a right thing, but they won't because then they'll lose the war, and so they have to be pragmatic and not chase after them. And then the leader of the PRT, so they're debating whether or not to like dodge the law, right? And the law says, Miss Militia, the side of the law says, no, don't break the law. And then the leader of the PRT headquarters here, Pigot, comes in with Defiant and Dragon saying, hey, ends justify the means there's no, we're going to forgo the law of justice here in favor of results. So it's like even the authority here is waffling back and forth on whether to follow its own rules.
Yeah, I don't know. They're really stuck in kind of like a messy situation, I think, because the rules that they're referring to, like these stipulations, these boundaries, I would say, like they don't exist where they are right now, but then like outside of the city, they still do. Like there's still this whole like world that's happening, but these particular heroes in this particular city have been placed in a state that in this kind of liminal state, I think, of the city, like that their vigilante justice, if they were to undergo it in the city, I don't know, could really be distinguished from everything else. I don't know. I feel like the fact that the conversation is happening in this particular city versus like in Brockton Bay versus like anywhere else, I think also makes it much more complicated because they don't like, the people who are giving the orders aren't there anymore. Like they aren't seeing the daily kind of, attrition, I think, of living in this situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's why some of the people there have to stay out of the conversation because they don't have the perspective. So the last thing that I want to mention about this interlude is Defiant, is working on Dragon's code and finds out that she had a trigger event at some point.
Yes.
And I don't know if this is the right moment. Maybe we should just put it off to a different podcast because before we started recording this, Clarence and I both kind of went off a ledge talking about all the implications of just Dragon's very existence.
Like her humanity, if there is a humanity.
And her teleportation paradox sort of thing with her, like when she's in a body and it dies, she comes back, but that body, that consciousness that was in the body definitely did fully die.
And like, does she feel like pain, or is it just like pain stimulus? Like, how much of pain is like physical,
Right. Is it like a pain is your body notifying you that there's a problem? With her, does it feel like pain, or is it just
would it like register
a notification?
In her brain? Oh, I guess. Well, does she have like a brain singularly if her consciousness keeps moving from all these different places?
Yeah, this is where. Yeah. And okay, we're going off on a ledge. We're already close for time.
We could definitely,
let's talk about this
a
different moment. Dragon does not disappear, and so we'll leave it to talk about her
Yes.
again. But so specifically, let's talk about the passenger in her
Yes,
code.
specifically the passenger in her code. Very fascinating in terms of like, you know, did the flapping beings decide that she was human enough because they like, you know, stuck somebody in her, or like where does that like latch on like in her code? Like, is it also code? Is the passenger also code in this moment? Like, so then
just like in our brains, it's a physical
like in the brain, like does it
organ.
you know, like do they make gray matter? Like, is it part of the gray matter? Like, how does it? Is it a physical thing?
I think Bonesaw indicated that the corona palencia and the corona gamma, or I think that's what they're called, are actually like new lobes of the brain. I don't know if the brain is bigger or just a part was converted.
Like, what does that DNA look like?
Say it again.
What does the DNA look like? How do we like?
That's you know, interesting.
I don't know. There's so many like,
and it also is
things.
like a magical connection too, because not magical, but I mean not in story,
but like fancy.
It is a connection to something else. Is the implication?
Yeah, so there has to be some sort of like signaling, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if, you know, it is it's a specific physical location in humans, right? So in Dragon, is it like a specific module? I don't think so. I think it's kind of everywhere.
Yeah, like how does it sit? I don't know. I don't know how code works. I've only spoken to my computer once, you know? But like, is it like a physical thing? Or does it just like, is it dissolved? I don't know.
Yeah. This is also, for me, the moment that I really started, where I was like, okay, Dragon is definitely basically human. She's alive, is what this was to me. Which, even though that doesn't actually fully answer the question of are artificial mechanical things actually alive. I mean, the fact that she has a passenger paired with the fact that she had an interlude really makes me think that she is alive in the story for sure.
Yeah, she's basically, like, she has the stipulations for, you know, requirement of humanity, I guess.
Yeah.
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 Dragon.
Yeah. The way I parsed this originally, and now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure how much I still subscribe to it, but the notion to me was that like her trigger event is kind of where she becomes like a human being, where she becomes like alive.
Yeah, that's what I
don't know if that's actually true.
That, like, is that what has made her into a person, or like into a human consciousness? Is this passenger,
or was she that beforehand?
Yeah, like, is that a prerequisite?
And it was just a normal trigger event.
Yeah, and how did it change her? Like, this passenger, like, because, you know, other people have been like healed or that sort of thing. Like, how did it change her, this trigger event? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the end of the first Dragon half of the arc. So the second half of the arc starts with Taylor again going to her father and meeting some of her father's friends. They are well-meaning folk, a little bit rougher than Taylor and her dad are super used to. But I think what's really significant here is just how out of place Taylor feels at home. Her mom's death still hits her in the gut, while her father seems to be a little bit better at dealing with it. And additionally, they also debate with her about the morality of Skitter's actions. Yes. And the whole notion of, you know, is it better to live under a tyrannical rule, or to a tyrannical rule that works, or a bad rule that leaves you free? And she's surprised that they aren't happy that Brockton Bay isn't being condemned, and so that they don't want to be a slave in heaven. Yeah. And but Danny here has the nuanced take about how sometimes he wonders if he's both a slave and in hell, and if they get a choice.
Yeah. Danny. He also brings up he poses the image, right, of like an Iron Age sort of thing, where there's like familial power passage and like militant rule and all of this, and it's like it's a very different look. This whole discussion is from, because the view that we're getting from anybody, even if it's out of like somebody else's perspective, like Sierra, is that it's from the rulers or like the minions, you know. We don't see the like gentlefolk perspective very often. Yeah, and she, I don't know, it's it's such a totally different situation of like spending time with like these people who are like kind of relaxing, you know, having a couple of drinks and like just having this discussion about what's happening where they're just kind of like postulating, you know, whereas like she has the ability to like change things, you know, like she has so much more power than what they do. I don't know.
Yeah. I think this also reveals just how out of touch she is also. Yeah. She seems totally shocked by their reaction to this, which is, I think like her territory is the only one that like people could point to and be like, okay, things are like definitely, you know, better there. But most of the other places are just like, well, maybe there's less crime, but even then, you know, there's still drugs being run and stuff.
Yeah.
So even, you know, the villains might be doing better than the heroes were, but that doesn't mean that they're doing good either. So
yeah, and they're still contending with like a major, you know, in the aftermath of like a major, you know, devastating situation. Like there's still like a lot of infrastructure that needs to happen and like all of this. I don't know.
Yeah. So Coil then, so they go to the debate. As a tiny note, I just was very amused by the fairy being brought up again, because it's like,
oh my gosh, yeah.
I feel like there are bigger concerns.
Well, it's just, you know, it's just one of those things.
There is a crater in the middle of the city, and we're talking about the fairy.
It just, that's such classic like city politics, you know?
Yeah.
That they're like, well, let's not address the like big issue, but how about all these small things?
And you know, the people like the dockworkers still have like a connection, a feeling about the fairy. So even if it's not actually important anymore, it still feels important.
Yeah.
So Coil attacks the debate. A bomb goes off. Although we later learn that and Coil appears to die. But of course, later we learn that the bomb was faked, and not many people actually died, but tons were injured, including Taylor, who is left blind.
Yes. First I want to talk about her being blind, because like she's blind for like the rest of the arc, you know? And then also like later on she like is like physically hurt, so she like can't, like she's coughing this whole time, and she's like slowly deteriorating after every situation. And
this whole already at this point she has the metal in her shoulder.
Like
she's already
that. She's just not doing well like physically, but then at the same time she's like functioning really well with like just her bugs, you know? I mean, she can't like read social situations and like, but the visibility that she like...
She can drive.
Yeah, like, oh my god, I totally forgot until the moment that she was driving that she couldn't see. And then I remembered immediately, and she's like feeling it. I was like, oh my god, she's just out here driving with no visibility. So stressful.
No visibility, no license.
Yeah, her justification of being able to drive is like, oh yeah, I am 16. Yeah,
because that's how... Yeah, that is how licensing works.
Of course.
When you're 16, you that is when the ability to drive gets
just
subsumed
like
by you into your consciousness,
transferred.
Yeah,
yeah. But then also, just in terms of like the bomb itself, and like, I mean, I know it's like not many people were hurt, all of this, but like the planning behind it and everything, like, definitely, it's good that not more people were hurt or killed, but like people were still hurt, you know? And it's also like, just like the level of demonstration that Coil is willing to go. I feel like the illusion of creating that much violence and like it has the same intentionality as like a bomb itself, you know? Mm-hmm. I don't know. It bodes ill.
Yeah. Also, people were definitely like permanently injured in the wake of this.
Yeah.
I mean, Taylor was left blind. You have to imagine what happened to everyone else there, you know?
Oh yeah, we kind of
Which is... Yeah, really messed up.
But I don't know. Coil he seems like one of those, like, he's got the hero syndrome type thing where he hurts people to save them, that sort of thing. Like in The Incredibles, you know, with the man with the orange hair.
With the hero syndrome.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Hilarious.
That. Oh my god. Syndrome has hero syndrome. That's...
Yeah, but it seems like Coil is kind of like setting that up. Because that's why he did this, right? Is because he like... is setting himself up to pretend to be the hero.
That said, I don't think he has like the emotional component.
Oh yeah, no,
of
it's
that.
not. There's no like
yet.
catharsis or anything coming out of this. This is just like him playing.
He's just doing it. Yeah. So in the wake of that, Taylor decides that she's going to leave her father. It feels like a permanent decision, which is not great. But they go to meet Coyle, a.k.a. Thomas Calvert, who is now the new PRT director. Very, very quickly, like one day later.
So fast.
He agrees to, yes, because Pico is not acceptable anymore. But he agrees to let Dinah go. But of course, even though it really seems like it's going to happen, as soon as they step outside, Taylor is teleported away. And Taylor goes, no monologues. And then Calvert pulls the trigger, and we cut to an interlude in the most cliffhanger ever.
So tense.
This interlude takes place between a trigger being pulled and the gunshot. That's
like,
yeah.
What a moment to pause. Just, yeah.
I can't remember what my emotions were the first time I read this. I was probably like screaming. I was like, why?
I think I was just, I mean, I feel like I just keep getting surprised at like the moments that Taylor just like becomes naive. Like it's just the most inopportune moments, you know? And it's all, I mean, it's centered around Dinah, but like this whole situation, it's probably a setup, you know? I don't know. It's just, it's so stressful. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she even thinks that easy, where it's like, it's not over.
Yeah, like, you need to be on guard.
Yeah. So here we have Marquis Interlude. So we see how he's kind of a cool guy.
Yeah.
Like when I say cool, I don't mean like he's, you know, a good person. I don't know about that, but he's just like a fascinating personality. We see how his persona is this carefully constructed and performed act. He's managing this wing of the prison. He's really worried about his daughter, Amy, this damaged girl that might get them killed, and won't talk about what happened. So there's a ton of fascinating stuff happening here. And of course, we see a lot more about the birdcage. But they meet with the other cell block leaders, and Amy talks with Glastig Wenye. So that's how you pronounce that?
Glastig Wenye.
Wenye.
Got it, okay.
Yeah. A.k.a. the Fairy Queen.
Yes.
Who talks about how in 300 years the fairy will rise, and how Amy is actually an equal to her, which we're implied is really, really... Glastig Wenye is implied to be very powerful, and also to have stuff to do with death. I don't know how you parse that.
She has something to do with death?
Yeah, where Marquis says how she can have him after death, basically.
Very intriguing.
Mm-hmm. So Marquis then takes Amy to get a tattoo to have finally like some kind of physical manifestation of her, you know, guilt and I mean ostensibly for her to remember her sister, but
it'll always be like tainted.
Yeah. Panacea then says all of the insight she's had about passengers and whatnot into an empty room, which is a kind of prayer to Dragon, which is fascinating. And far above in space, the Seamerg moves and the message is scrambled.
Yes. So did they know to anticipate, you know, and to scramble the message? I don't know. Wait, also, how do you pronounce Seamerg?
Seamerg.
Okay, Seamerg. Yes, I don't know. The Seamerg is very, because she has like, she can see into the future. Yes, she knows to anticipate things.
I think that is the implication.
Yes. I don't know. Quite a mess. But I don't know. But the kind of like look into Marquis, I think, and the way that he like cultivates his image, you know, he's very specifically setting up different things, like his thought process of like, oh yeah, like post-it note to self, I need to stage a mutiny to like reinforce my power. Yeah. It's just he's a interesting one. And there's a lot of we see this a lot, I think, with actually we don't see it a lot. We see it with Marquis and we see it definitely with Taylor, but like their thought process behind it of like setting things up and kind of thinking about the implications of it. Actually, no, we do. We see Bakuto kind of thinking through how to establish power. There's a lot of discussions about how to maintain and create, and you know, like the cultivation of leadership. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It makes me wonder how, you know, you would want to compare Marquis to Taylor, or I mean, Taylor's always learning from other villain leaders. That's kind of how
she kind of like was taking notes.
Yeah, and we also see how Coil, decides to take power. We talked about this before, I think. But what I find just interesting is how Marquis' understanding is even more about posturing and pretending to know things. Like, I think this is a beat that's hit multiple times where he just like smiles and doesn't say, but he just doesn't know the answer. When there is no good answer, he just like smiles and pretends that something. Yeah, which is, it's just fascinating how he like lets himself admit that he doesn't have answers like that.
Yeah.
Where on the other hand, Taylor would always like lie to herself that she knows things.
Yeah, he kind of like acknowledges the boundaries of his existence, I think.
Yeah, like if someone asks Marquis something or challenges him, right? He pretends that he has an answer while Taylor will make up an answer.
Yeah, the two different types of teachers. Yeah.
Yes. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
But also, I have this whole thought that I was thinking about that I want to share, but I mean, you probably can't say anything. But okay, so to me,
in the script, I just wrote in response to it because I don't.
It's probably terribly wrong, but it seems it all makes sense in my head about like how fairies are like another name for the passengers, right? And then I don't know. Somehow I feel like Simurgh like the Simurgh knows like perhaps the Endbringers are like closer to the flapping beings, or like they know to be paired, like they know they have a plan for like what's coming. They have specific things, which gives them motivation. When before I was very confused about what Leviathan is doing, but maybe he had also like but also maybe there's intentionality behind everything that all three of them are doing, and I don't know, all of these things. Yes.
All of these things.
I don't have anything else beyond that. That's just it's still like cultivating in my head. Yeah.
Yes. So back to Taylor. So we cut back where Taylor immediately gets shot, which is frankly a shock to me. Just the fact that she actually got shot.
Yeah.
That said, she does have her armor actually is bulletproof, which is interesting. Really.
What a way!
Cool.
What a way to find out. What a way to find out.
Yeah, what a way to find out.
By getting shot.
So to summarize what happens, she gets shot. The place is set on fire. She's choking on smoke. She gets shot again, this time in the shoulder. She falls from a 2-story window. She gets flashbanged, shot at with hundreds of bullets, dodges grenades, and who knows what else in the other timelines. All while Coil is using his power to try things out. So in this is the smallest timeline where Coil actually thought he had the best chance.
Yeah.
And she does all this while blind and with a spike of metal in her arm.
Yeah.
And somehow she still gets away. It's confusing. It's harrowing.
And I feel like there's like two different things. First, that's such intense planning, like on the part of Coil, like to anticipate all of those and like have to like counter her counters to his. There's just so much to like think about, because both of them are like planning people in the way that they like attack, and then that sort of like, I feel like the fact that she still escapes sort of like solidifies her attitude that she was talking about before with like Regent, where she's like, there's always a way, like where she's like has this strange optimism even in the face of like the end of the world and all of this,
that humans will always survive. Yeah.
But then also secondary point that I didn't write down but totally I wanted to, was that when she recounts this later to Brian and Imp, I think Imp's like, you still got out of all of that? And then Taylor just kind of like tosses her hair back and is like, oh yeah, of course, and then keeps going. It just seems so like she's so dismissive of it, but it seemed like a huge thing for her to escape. Yeah.
It's extremely intense. I think I remember, and each time I read it, I still get like, I still don't know how she gets out of it.
So it boggles my mind.
Yeah. I really thought it was going to be something miraculous, like a second trigger or, someone coming out of nowhere to save her.
And she even like, she thinks about that.
Because I really didn't think she would be able to get out of this herself.
Huh.
Yeah. Which kind of addresses it and kind of tells us, no, that's not going to happen. So it's interesting. So she gets to her team and is then framed as turning on them. And they're going to kill her for gonna kill her for revenge, but and Imp is kicking her ass, and there's the whole thing with the swarm box among other things, and but Brian listens and finds the truth, and she's exonerated.
Yes, this was a very harrowing moment, I think, also, because it's like, she finally escaped, and, it was going to work out, but then suddenly, like, she was going to be...
Is she even going to be able to tell them? Is she going to be able to talk?
And then after, like, it's, kind of revealed that she has been framed, it happens a lot quicker that, everybody, I mean, besides Imp, but, like, particularly Bitch, I think, is the most notable, gets more mad at being tricked than she does, like, she kind of, once she's assured that, oh yes, this is Taylor and Taylor didn't betray us, she's kind of like, okay, yeah, that's fine. But now she's like mad at like being tricked and this kind of like lack of honesty.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We only see 3 Undersiders' reactions here. Regent is somewhere else, and of course Tattletale wouldn't be here, otherwise the swapping wouldn't have worked at all. But Imp is just pissed off and ready to take revenge. She kind of feels like she's vindicated. Rachel is just extremely angry and horribly betrayed again, but is quick to move that anger to the appropriate target once another one is presented. But Brian just seems like he goes, why? Like he's almost broken is what it feels like. But yeah, he listens and
Brian.
Man, it's so intense there. I was really worried that they're not gonna listen to her.
I was so worried about that because they didn't have time to speak about it the last time this sort of situation came up, because she like left and there wasn't room for discussion, but I'm glad that there was this time. I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah. So they construct a plan to confront Coil, and the ruse immediately fails. So he teleports in a bunch of soldiers, and this is another time where we really feel that they're all going to die. They're all at gunpoint. It's this really intense conversation, but Taylor, with some very far forethought with Tattletale, they execute the string bean plan, and it prevails. Tattletale reveals how she outsmarted the big guy, and where Coil monologued kind of in the first place.
Yes, they're both monologuing.
Does in reverse. Yeah, yes. And then everything's taken away from him. The travelers are disabled, and Skitter is the one to execute Coil.
Yeah, and it's kind of like what I was saying before, of like everything that she's been doing now, like all of this like increased violence and like how much authority she's been taking, all of this I think has been setting her up for this situation, for her to like act in the moment and like take that, next step of killing Coil. Yeah, but also I'm very glad that they both like kind of monologued, because I like the explanations of how things happen,
Yes.
It feels like neat.
Yeah, for sure. I think it would not. The monologues on both sides are really fun. So I'm glad there was an excuse for them to happen. Also, Tattletale would totally monologue.
Oh,
that's her
absolutely.
thing. She's a monologuing villain. Yeah. I also want to point out how super, super close they got to death here. If Coil had lied and didn't use his power at the meeting, which he didn't even have to, right? In the other timeline, he just doesn't have the meeting, and maybe he just has it later, right? Yeah. So he could have just... It's almost like a time-saving maneuver, right? Where he just decides to use it here rather than going through with it, and if it's wrong, dissolving the entire timeline and having the whole meeting again. He decides to have it here. So if he had lied, it would have been revealed to him, and they wouldn't have won.
Yeah,
they would have no way of knowing that it's already failed. Yeah. So, yeah, very, very close here. And so now we have Arc 17, Migration. There's no interlude before or after this because it's an interlude arc. So in this one is in which the travelers travel and make some very, very, very bad choices.
These teens.
So we open on...
These teens.
These teens. Yeah. So we open on Kraus leaving his home. He's going to his friend's place to get ready for a competitive video game match to get a sponsorship. There's some drama in the group. He's dating Noelle, the team captain, and they have to vote whether they're going to kick off Cody, a longtime member who already hates Kraus, to make room for Kraus, who is a better long-term player. And yeah, so there's a ton of drama here. The first thing I think is, when did you realize that these were the travelers?
I think I realized almost immediately. After whenever Krauss starts thinking about Noelle, I think I kind of recognized immediately and sort of like started filling in the blanks that this must be the travelers. I didn't quite figure out who was who until a little bit later.
Yeah.
Once like some people died and others, their true nature was sort of, made plain. But yeah, I think pretty early on.
What did you think of Cody before? Like, not what was your opinion of him, but what did you think of his what did you think of the larger number of travelers in the majority of this arc versus the amount of travelers that there is in the present day? Like, what did you think happened? Or did that just not cross your mind? Which is
I
also
think
it
I
certainly
thought
didn't cross mine when I read it.
Somebody was going to die, but I didn't know how or when, or they were going to abandon somebody and then they may show up later. But then, I mean, yeah.
So
I kind of
both happened.
Yeah, that's true. I kind of like left. I wasn't quite sure how it was going to happen, but I figured there was going to be something terrible that would sort of, set it up. I guess I assumed there would be something terrible that like would explain why they were so alone with each other, I guess, and like why they kind of had this like lingering resentment, and like this obligation.
So we first meet Krauss, and he's well, what did you think of his personality when we first meet him?
Krauss seems like kind of a dick, or like. Yeah. Like, he's full of himself and, like, very assured in what he can do and what he can make others do. And so he seems very arrogant in that sense. But then also, he's, like, kind of willing to, like, respect whatever Noelle wants to do or, like, what she needs to do. Or, I don't know. He has these moments of humanity and, like, empathy and stuff. But, I don't know. I mean, that kind of, like, gets tossed out of the window a little bit when they're in the Endbringer situation. Because he kind of like does whatever he wants. Yeah.
There's a lot going on with Krauss.
Yes.
I didn't write this down, but I think his connection to Noelle is just so like he really does like want to care for her, right? Like there's multiple times where he wants to like hold her, and when she's injured, he really does care about her, want to like make her feel better and stuff. But you also don't like. I mean, when he starts talking about like all the girls in the group, and he's like really like lecherous, right? He's like, talking about just like
I don't know.
Yeah, Marissa's the hottest, but she's totally out of everyone's league, so no one's asked her out. And Jess is pretty cool, but I can't date a cripple.
Yeah, like he seems kind of like a shithead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. And then like, I feel like he's so congratulatory to himself. Because he's, like, respecting Noelle, blah, 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 all of this. And he's like, oh, I'm better than Cody because of this. But then, like, it also seems the way that... I don't know if it's just Cody because, like, that's his perspective. But it seems like Krauss kind of, like, ingratiated himself into the situation. Because she didn't seem like... The way that it was laid out, it seemed like she wasn't really open to, like, anybody. And then he kind of, like, pushed his way in. And then was like, okay, like, I'll sit here, like, in this kind of in-between state.
Yeah. I really do think that... Well, so, I think Krauss's thing is that he thinks that if he can get someone to do something, that means that they really do want to do it. And that's not at all true.
Yes, absolutely.
He does this thing repeatedly where he'll go... I think being in his perspective is really interesting because he does the thing where he'll go, it's totally okay for you to say no, hurt my feelings, I'm nothing, and like pretending to fall on his sword, right? Which, like, is... That sentiment is actually, a really important thing to convey. However, we don't know how he's saying it. I think how you say a statement like that is incredibly important because you can say it in a way that it's very obviously you're trying to guilt trip them, or you could say it in Krauss's way, which I think he edges that line of like, he's definitely trying to invoke guilt.
Yes.
While maintaining that he's actually being a good guy, because every single time he does it, it works. It works with Noelle. It works with Marissa when talking about her dreams. So, Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like the only one who really, like, points it out is Cody. You know, and then everyone else is like, oh,
And
like,
Cody,
oh, it's Cody saying this, so we shouldn't listen. But
except Cody also has his own problems. I mean,
he's
also
he's
an asshole.
Definitely also an asshole. But which I feel like that's why people don't. I don't know. It just their whole dynamic. It's already volatile. Like before the attack, you know, like when they were just playing video games, which I totally didn't know they were a gaming group until like too late did I realize that.
Right. Right. You think that they already have powers.
I thought they were like there, you know, debating about these sponsors, you know, because we had discussed previously like some like corporate groups and all of this, you know, so I was thinking, oh, maybe they're like corporate, all of this. But no, they're like talking about teen things, you know? But then they're all like they're already full of drama and all of that has like just boiled over and like so it's all this like messy and there's like unrequited love that's turned sour and like other people are mad and there's so much that's already a problem and then that gets like placed into a situation that will exacerbate it. 100% will exacerbate it to the point like that will like stretch all of these things until they break, you know?
Yeah. You know, I legitimately can't remember, so this is like a real question I'm asking. I don't know if the Seamerg can see into other worlds, and so I'm wondering, like, if she specifically, like, pulled the building that they were in into this reality in order to get them specifically, because she already knew how messed up they were, or if she was, like, she brought over the building almost by accident, and it was like, oh, these people are really messed up, I'll use them.
Yeah, or does she know... Is it one of those things where it's like she knows she needs to do something but she doesn't know why, so she pulls the building like without knowing until they arrive? Like, is it one of those sorts of things?
Yeah, that could be it.
I don't know.
It could be. So on how bad the team is, they're set to self-destruct at some point anyway. Like even with Cody removed, right? Yeah, like, just the fact that it's like Kraus is already like Jess is almost at Kraus's throat already, right? And Noelle is clearly in a horrible place, and Kraus is probably making things worse.
Yeah, he's like pressuring her without or at least, like while also pretending not to, you know?
Yeah, pretending to himself too.
Like yeah. And then we have like Oliver who doesn't. I mean, he's kind of like the weaker link, I think, of the members, which I feel like. And they aren't like they're not very nice about it. I don't know. That just everybody's kind of like it's just all so messy that like I don't know. It's not a great group to like get stuck with for 2 years in a place that you don't know anyone else. Yeah,
with superpowers after you've been seeing visions from a supernatural being to exacerbate your worst qualities. So let's get into that actually. So just as the game is about to start, the earthquake. An earthquake, or what they think is an earthquake, happens and the building falls. Their friend Chris dies. Noelle is injured and they have to escape the building. All the while, the Seamerg and Scion duke it out in the skies.
Yeah. And it's also, in this moment, it takes such a huge turn. Because, like, these are just teens, right? Like, they don't have training. Like they don't have, you know, training for medical emergencies. They don't have, you know, the kind of practice for Endbringer scenarios, right? Because they aren't from that world. So it's like they're thrust into this situation where they don't have the survival mode, you know, tactics, and they don't have the ability to assess the situation. They're just kind of like stuck blindly walking into whatever it is. With just like the little bit of information that Jess has, right?
Yeah. It also strikes me how like visceral and this changes. So we go from, you know, the drama of that room, right, where like even someone punching someone else was kind of like over the line, with Cody threatening to, but Chris gets his head bisected by a bookcase, right? Noelle has more like, less visible injuries, but they go outside and like it's freezing cold. They're afraid of like getting frostbite by how they're going to climb down. Luke gets his leg sliced open by a window, which like really I don't know why, but that's what got me to get sympathetic pain. And then they get to that hero whose intestines are pushed out by a mess of tangled rebar.
Yes. Yeah, that's
his head
such
is
a
blown
visual
up.
image. That's ugh.
Yeah. So this change from the normal world, or a world that's like ours, into this bloody world is just so sudden and
it's
viscerally
really, really
violent.
jarring.
Yeah. So as they're escaping, there is a scream in the air. As they're going, there's a scream in their heads, and the heroes fighting her are employing some brutal tactics, blowing themselves up rather than succumbing to the scream.
The scream. I am so fascinated by it. Just like the way that it has been described, where it seems very siren-esque, where like everybody's frightened to hear it, you know, and then like it's very like atonal, and then like keeps changing. All these like,
and it gets more complicated over time.
It seems like it would be a really fascinating symphony to like compose, you know. I mean, also it's like terrible, and all of this creating like all this this almost like a harbinger, I suppose, of disaster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's also like the idea of not of having specifically to not pay attention to something, and the more you pay attention to it, the more you like feel the need to pay attention to it. It's tinnitus. That's what tinnitus does. I don't know if you have ever experienced it, but like tinnitus is the same kind of notion. It's a like sound in your head that's not real. Yeah, where you hear a ringing or something else. I know Wildbow has talked about how he has very, very, very bad tinnitus. Right, he's partially deaf, and that's one of the more awful symptoms of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really resonated with me. Just that's a real experience, and it just gets turned even more horrifying because it's a singing and it's complicated and jars your thoughts. Yeah.
Noise, just like continuous noise is just like a lot. I don't know. Just it's very like heavy, and it takes up a lot of space, you know, in one's mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I wrote some stuff down after hearing a friend of mine who's blind talk about, I don't know, I forget exactly what she said that triggered it, but the fact that sight is something that you can turn off, you can close your eyes, but you cannot turn off your hearing with exceptional circumstances or external tools. So it's like sight, you are picking where you're looking, it's an active thing, a sense that you control, and hearing is totally passive, and you're just subject to just the world. Yeah. So one other thing here, I didn't write it down. I forgot to, but the Seamerg visions and the flashbacks were really interesting, and I wanted to know what you thought of them.
Those are very interesting. It seemed very interesting, particularly the way that they were setting up people to dwell on particular things, and like it seemed like the particular mindsets that kind of set the rest of their, like, particularly this group, or like their dynamic moving forward. Like each memory kind of, you know, makes them act in particular ways, so that like it's very curated. I think all of these almost like this emotional kind of, you know, course correcting of like, you know, focusing Cody on his you know, attitude towards Kraus, and like Kraus focusing on Noelle, and like all of this, like the way that it's all gets sort of set up. I feel like it's like this prepping of what's going to happen, you know, even by dwelling on the past. It like sets up the way that people think about themselves and each other, you know, in the aftermath of like gaining powers. Yeah.
So the travelers make it to the edge of the quarantine zone. There are terrifying powered monsters running around, and soldiers preventing their exit. Inside the house, they see, or Kraus finds a bird repeatedly smashing its head against a wall, and there's actually a lot of bird imagery in this arc, but we'll return to that. And Kraus cuts its head off. So we kind of come to understand that the Seamerg makes guided missiles.
Yes. Before we get to the bird imagery, I want to address the missiles, because I feel like, I mean, Kraus seems like he thinks that he's like the guided missile, but I don't think that he is. I think he just has like, he has made himself into someone influential to the rest, you know? But like, it's not really like him as a person, his personage that's the missile. It's his action of kind of forcing everyone else to act, like everyone else to like take the powers, and his like misstep of like only giving half to Noelle. I think that's what the guided missile is. So like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I find it interesting, the notion though. I mean, they stick to it that the Seamerg only makes a couple, right? And I don't think there's anything in the stories that they tell in their conversation that indicate that she only specifically picks out like one. She definitely doesn't pick out one. Like each of those events they talk about like had a lot more than one. So yeah, I don't know why they're like, well, maybe we're not the guided missile. It's like, I think the implication is that everyone is.
It seemed like she kind of like sets everybody in action.
Yeah.
But she also like is sort of bird-like as well, right? In the way she's kind of...
Yeah, so she's this angelic figure with endless wings. And so there's a couple of beats of bird imagery, less than I thought upon, less than I expected when I was re-looking for it. But there's the Seamerg, there's this bird smashing itself. I think there's a couple of times where people are described as bird-like, but I don't know how relevant that is. I mean, Noelle is described, I think, like a sparrow, I think is the term. Okay. But of course, at the very end of this, where they wake up on the beach, that's when he goes over to see the stain, right? And birds are pecking at it. I'm pretty sure it specifically calls out how there's a white feather there, which specifically calls it back to me. Also, just pointing out a different direction. The house that they go to is such a mess. It's like almost very clearly to me that they definitely like, there's a reason they went to this particular house, because it's a chaotic mess. It's clearly that the owners were not, super clean, and then you have the bird and all these like newspaper clippings and stuff. Yeah,
it kind of like sets them up for them to know. Also, the bird. Oh, I keep messing up with the desk, but the bird in the cage that's like banging its head, and Kraus being the one to like kill it, to like put it out of its misery, but it's also like he engages in violence, I think, so very readily and like very quickly that he kind of I feel like that it kind of colors the rest of his attitude, this like immediate action of like, I'm going to put this bird out of its misery by killing it,
Yeah, he's the first one to grab the weapons, to stab a monster, to take a power. And it's interesting, he starts taking weapons, and then Cody's like, what the hell are you doing? And later on, he's the one, or Kraus is the one that's really worried about Cody, doing violence. He's like, doing violence against another person? No, that would never happen. I'm just, arming myself and then doing violence against a monster, but I would never, do it to another human. And then, he wants to, but
also how like, they haven't seen monsters before, have they? This is just kind of like all totally new to them.
Yeah, I don't think they've.
I don't know. It just. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they've like quickly they like accept, and he decides. I mean, they're also like kind of threatening him, but like
that they decide that they're inhuman and deserving of death.
I don't know. It's such a quick assessment, and I guess it's like this. They're in survival mode, all of this, but like.
Well, like, for example, the one of the three that they eventually fight, the one with like the scythe arms, like he doesn't kill Kraus immediately. I mean, I think they needed him alive to do a thing that was going to kill him, but like it's not just a murderous monster.
Yeah, there's like at least a little bit of discussion.
So going forward, eventually we learn that the travelers are actually from Earth Aleph, the other Earth. So they are aware of superheroes. But for the most part, it's basically like our world. They don't have Scion, for example. Yeah. They don't have Endbringers. They have just a couple supers. So the transportation of them to Earthbed is this subversion of the portal fantasy genre or trope, I guess. Like Narnia, right? Where the magical world in this time is actually horrible, and
oh yes,
you
I
do not
wanted
want to
to
go
ask
there.
about
So
that of like the portal fantasy. Is in this situation, is Narnia to be assumed that it was a good place to go? Because I feel like it depends on which Narnia they went to.
wait, what do you mean?
Like, I mean, some instances of Narnia, like when they return, it's not a grand place, or like when the you know, like the Ice Queen or whatever
but
was ruling
it's a
it.
place where like Narnia, even in those times where it's like the queen rules and stuff, it's still a place where like your actions matter, and it's like a glorious world. It's where in this, it's not only that it's horrible, but also that your actions don't matter as much usually. This is that fantasy. This is that fantasy where you like, if you're thinking about, I wish I was an Earthvet and then I got superpowers and I could do stuff, but it's like, no, you're not. You wouldn't just suddenly be better off than everyone else
kind of like stuck
in there.
In the yeah.
So this comparison to there's one moment later on in the arc where Krauss thinks, how Head just put it, the world was sublime, a world that was awesome in the truer sense of the word, greater in many respects. In the metaphorical sense, the peaks were higher, the valleys lower, works of art more artful, extremes more extreme. It wasn't a good thing. Make the mountains twice as tall and the chasms twice as deep, and things start crumbling.
Yes. A very interesting term to use, sublime. Because, I mean, I want to go into it later also, like, for a while, but just the concept of, like, the sublime is that sort of, like, that, like, crossover of, like, beauty and monstrosity, where they, like, there is, like, you know, abject terror, but then also, like, some sort of, you know, not awe, but, like a reverence, I guess. I don't know. It's just, it's a very interesting place to be in. A description of this world seems apt, I think. Yeah.
So as they go on, there's drama. Krauss fights those monsters. They see some visions, and he picks up some cauldron super vials. They debate using them, decide on no, because that's going to basically increase their agency to mess things up further. They go to get medical help, but they can't exit quarantine because they have no identity. So Krauss takes a power jaunt and gives half a vial to Noelle.
I mean, I know that he's like being driven by like desperation and delirium and all of this, and he's like kind of like excuses it a little bit, but like at the same time, like they had this whole discussion about the vials and how they weren't going to take them. And then he also knows the situation that he's in this other Earth, right? Like not everybody's had that discussion at this point, right? It's just Krauss and Jess?
No, I think
or
at
does
this
everyone
point,
know at this point?
I think at this point they do, right?
I don't remember. But I mean...
Yeah, no, at this point they do, because the hospital doesn't exist in their version of...
Yeah, that's true. But see, like, this whole...
Madison.
There's like this whole thing of... They've all agreed upon something, and he... Even though he's like made himself the ruler, like, or not ruler, but like leader, he then just kind of like tosses it out the window and does whatever he wants, you know? I don't know. I feel like I don't know. He does that a lot in these moments, or like in this interlude, like the whole arc. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So then the rest of them get powers as well, and then they leave quarantine. But of course, things went wrong. Noelle grows an extra eye as they're
on
leaving.
her thigh. Yes. Yes. So cool. It's so cool. I mean, also like that'd be horrible, but at the same time, it's so exciting. You know?
Oh my god. Yeah.
Sorry, I really like body horror in this like context.
Oh, you're gonna love all of Wildless stuff.
It's just so interesting.
So much.
You know, there was something else that I was going to say. Oh yes. Also, like, I mean, we don't check in with Oliver quite as much because he like, I mean, but like, how is he really? Like, like, what is he up to? Like, does he? I mean, did we discuss that? Like, how he's affected as much?
We did not.
Or like, I don't know. Like,
so he takes the other half of the
But he
super
doesn't have
potion.
any sort of like, you know.
He has a very, very, very mild ability. Basically, when he looks at people, when he looks at attractive people, he becomes slightly more like that person, and he becomes more attractive over time. Basically,
okay.
including
That
more
whole-
fit
that
and
whole,
stuff.
like-
So he's just.
Paragraph makes sense to me now.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
I think basically his power is to look like an Adonis. That's it.
I mean,
Which
that's like,
I mean, you
nice, I guess.
could be worse. That said, he doesn't have a stable identity, which makes things even worse for him. Actually, real quick, let's talk about how the irony of all the powers, which not all of them are super ironic, like, or not that's not what I meant to say. Not all of them are unsuited to them. For example, Trickster's power is exactly suited for him.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, his kind of like fits nicely.
Almost everyone else's, though,
Yeah,
is
nobody
not.
else's. They're all like kind of cruelly unmatched.
Yeah.
Which I guess that's what you get for like taking a vial that like doesn't match with you, just kind of randomly guessing
off of a name. Yeah.
But
one little thing. I hate how Kraus pours the superpower juice into a paper cup and then back into the vial before Oliver drinks that. Like, was there some left on that paper cup? It's just so upsetting.
That's true.
To
And
me.
like, does he throw it
I
away?
don't know.
Like, what do you do with that waste?
You wouldn't do that with medicine,
Does he put it in like one of those little containers that they put all the needles in?
Yeah, in the biohazard thing.
Biohazard,
Yeah,
that's what it is.
if someone else licked up that, what would happen?
Who would? Oh, I don't know.
Um,
And then like, how large is the vial? Like, did he have to like squeeze? I'm imagining like a little sort of, the size that you would put like a memory in, something small.
Yeah, right. The size of a vial you put a
I don't
memory in.
like the
That's
size
exactly...
of like a Tic Tac thing. Who knows? But like,
I think it's, in my mind, it has to be big enough that you can pour it a paper cup into it without needing a funnel.
Yeah.
So.
So many mechanics that I have questions about.
Yes. So later on, they go to. We cut several years later. I think basically like a year and a half later, to a meeting with Accord, who is a very meticulous supervillain, and unfortunately, though, Sundancer interrupts and almost gets herself killed because this is the meticulous supervillain. But it's an important warning because Cody, aka Perdition, quote, touched Noel 3 times, creating 3 murderous mutated clones, which the travelers have to put down.
They're all him, right? They're all clones of him?
Yes. They all have his power and seemingly some aspect of his memories or personality or something.
Oh, terrible.
Yeah. And Trickster then talks to... Trickster gets a call from Coil, and Coil offers them hope. And Trickster talks to Noel and decides to give Cody to Accord to dispose of.
So readily. Just makes this decision. All by himself. Not consulting anybody. Just kind of decides,
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like his authority is something that like is not I mean, it's not given, right? And he kind of everyone else is just kind of dragged along into the mess that he created, And they like I mean, I can understand why Sundancers feel so alone in this situation. When perhaps she doesn't feel like she has autonomy in the group when he's the one making decisions, all of this,
Yeah. I wonder what the intergroup relations are between the stable members are, because it seems like almost everyone like interacts with Kraus as like an intermediary between all of them.
Yeah.
Where like Jess and Luke and Marissa, the stable members don't team up or anything. I think they all dislike each other as well or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I had a thought. Also, I feel like before this interlude, I thought that Noelle just like consumed people, which is like why she was like hidden away instead of like, I don't know. I mean, I suppose she could still now, but like it seems like her.
Yeah, we see her, and she's almost hard to imagine. She takes up the majority of a master bedroom, with the lower half of her body, like centaur-like is what it seems, but the lower half of her body is a mess of like cloven limbs, tentacles, and monstrous heads.
And like, how does she move?
One of which, or the main
around?
one, is I have no idea. Maybe in like a 18-wheeler, a U-Haul, maybe.
So cool.
It might be hard to fit her in there. The like dog head or wolf head, or I guess it's intentionally hard to define, is the size of a horse from front to back.
It's just so large.
Yeah.
Like, what is the skeleton? What does her skeleton look like?
How did she get in the room?
Did they have to cut through the door? Did they have to climb through a window?
I mean, they have a teleportation power,
that's true.
but
I forgot about that.
But still, I mean, he needs an appropriate amount of mass for it. So how did they get all that?
Pillows in or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
See, more mechanics. So many questions.
Yes. So I want to talk about Cody real quick.
Yes.
Cody is basically sentenced to death, but did he deserve it?
I mean,
well, okay. The main thing here is that the decision is made by Kraus and Kraus alone. The only other teammate that he consults with, only because she talked to him intentionally, is Marissa, and she just kind of gives in. But he doesn't even tell the other members of the group. There's no consensus. He's just like, nope, well, someone's got to die, and it's going to be Cody. And even though, they could fight back or something, they could try to teleport out or whatever, but yeah.
Yeah, he kind of just, like, accepts that this is the reality and that he's not going to, kind of go against a court in any sort of way. And I mean, I know Cody, has done terrible things and doesn't really, fit into the group, I guess. And I mean, notably, interacting with Noelle, knowing what she can do and what she does, but I don't know, it just seems so, cold and fast for Kraus to just be like, okay, well, he's gonna be the one to die.
Yeah. And I mean, the Seamerg was, the visions that she showed Cody were intentionally to get him to hate Kraus, and Kraus became the leader of the Travelers. So it's almost like, I mean, even this might have been preordained.
Yeah.
That, eventually
just like a
having
very
to kick...
long domino.
Yeah.
Or like one of those one of those Rube Goldberg machines,
Yes. I think that is exactly what the Seamerg is. But on Cody as well, it's with his mutated clones that we really see that Kraus was kind of totally right as well. The first mutant says stuff like, "She was mine and you ruined her," and so it's like, Cody totally is. This part of the reason he hates Kraus is just because he was possessive of Noelle and saw it as a loss. But the real Cody wouldn't say that,
just be
so that's the difference.
He's headed. Yeah.
Yes. You have I like the parenthetical you wrote on the script.
Oh, yes. Oh, my classification of Cody. Well, especially because, this is one of those, normal group of teens thrust into a situation that is survival and they have to deal with it and they, get powers or something like that, And it seems like Cody is the one, he's, the one guy in the zombie flick that pretends he's still human, Or, if they're stuck in, on a boat or something, he's the one that, brings a knife to the fight or, has a gun. He's the one that, exacerbates the situation or, escalates it so that everybody else has to, deal with whatever he has made it into. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then, Kraus is the one that, steps up and is like, oh, well, I had to kill him, I don't know if that's, an actual genre of things.
No,
it has become a classification in my head.
Yes. So, that scene ends basically with them, thinking of hope for the future, and then we cut to Trickster waking up on the beach where Coil was. Coil's body's already been removed. There's only a stain. Birds pecking at the remains. It's
very bleak, this situation, where he's the one that Kraus is the one that made the gamble to trust this villain, and then it's been a while and it hasn't worked out, and Noelle is off, doing whatever, wreaking havoc maybe. And then Trickster is kind of faced also with Ballistic was ready to leave and stay with the Undersiders, wasn't he? In their
something like that,
moments. And so he's kind of he's got a mess to deal with, before he can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Also, does he know that he doesn't know that Noelle's out?
No, but that is another thing that makes things even worse. Noelle is pissed off and clawed herself out of her own thing. So
yeah.
And that is the end of the key moment by key moment discussion. All right, so let's talk about book 2 as a whole. So this is the shortest book with 222,000 words, and we wrote 9,000 words of script, and we're at 3 hours.
Yep.
So cool. We didn't mean to do that, but here we are. So just talking about the like structuring of this chunk. So this book and the next suffer a little bit because of how we're chunking them. I think they're not like perfect. Worm wasn't meant to be put into books. It's in arcs.
I think that's just kind of like the effect of being a serial.
Yeah,
is that there isn't that like anticipated sort of divisions created.
Yeah,
those are like kind of retroactively placed on.
But as a tangent, I think it's very interesting just how that affects things, because like it really allows for the normal like 5-act kind of structure or 3-act structure just really change a lot more. A book has only so much time, and so the structure becomes more apparent. There's less room to play with it. But in a 30-arc, 1 million word long story, there's a lot more difference and nuance that can go on.
Yeah, so. Yeah, you're not kind of like forced into creating these, like wrapping things up when you don't want to, that sort of thing. Like, and there's moments like with the migration arc, like that can be those sort of like steps in different directions, or like kind of there's room to like add a variety of different things that don't necessarily have to like fit into like this singular one motion, I think.
Yeah, one directional rising action. Yeah. We go sideways a little bit.
It really like opens up a lot of possibility, I think, especially in terms of like character building and like world building.
Yeah, just how much we get to know characters is really. I mean, people really love Taylor and of course all the Undersiders, and that's because we spend so much time with them.
Yeah.
I mean, even the like one-off characters get even any character that has an interlude basically gets as much characterization as most like side main characters do in novels. Just by sheer word count.
There's so much.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what it is about like why there's just the way that like the character development is laid out. But I feel like because of the complexity, I think, of each individual, like there is that like kind of natural, not even just like getting to know, but like wanting to know about these characters and kind of wanting to see them to their ends.
Yeah.
That I don't know. There's just like this almost immediate, I don't know. It's easy to like to know them. And you get attached.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, just to point a case in point. The migration arc is 70,000 words. That's a novel. That's literally like the normal YA young adult like novel length is like 80,000 words. So that we have a novel with the Travelers. I think that just is really interesting to think about. Thinking about web series is so different than the normal books.
I feel like I just like my concept of how long a book is totally warped, because I don't classify books like by word count. It's like I think about how they sit in my hand and how long I'm going to sit on the couch or like outside. And reading.
How does it feel to read it? Dense stuff is always longer, no matter what.
Yeah, it's very interesting because we don't have like that weight. I mean, this is a whole another side discussion about like digital versus, tangible physical books. But I feel like even if we don't have that weight, like you just kind of like the motions of kind of like going through each particular chapter, through each particular arc, like, I don't know, you start feeling that weight, even if it's just like a phantom. Yeah.
Yeah. What I always find interesting thinking about Wildbow's works, and it's something that I've especially noticed with Pale. Now we're really digressing. We'll try to wrap this up, but is how normal the pace of the web serial feels to me. I mean, I'm also coming off after having read all of them, right? But in Migration, right, we digress from the main story for an entire novel, and yet it doesn't feel like I just had to go read a different book, right?
No,
it feels like a casual digression, which is fascinating to me. So
yeah, that is so interesting. I think it's because we've built in that rhythm of the interludes. Like you've already kind of become accustomed to kind of stepping out of the story to get a different glimpse, and particularly in the 2 arcs previous to Migration, a lot of those have been also kind of stepping back in time or stepping out to kind of world build or like give, kind of this moment by moment almost into like, characterization. So I feel like we kind of get set up to anticipate and to accept kind of stepping out and stepping back in.
Yeah.
With like a normalcy to it.
Yeah. The idea of rhythm is very interesting to me. Yeah. But okay, I think that should end our digression here. So what did we think about this book in particular, right? There's obviously 2 different sections. There is the Coil stuff, and then there is a Traveler's arc. But that said, I do think that the Traveler's arc does work well as a ending to this, just because it brings us back to the Coil, like the scene that we leave Skater's story and go into the Travelers is where we end with the Travelers.
Yeah, it's kind of like inserting like a bubble, in the chronological timeline, just kind of beneath the surface, like an aqueduct or something.
Yeah.
So I think it fits very nicely.
Taylor is definitely getting more violent. I think that's a trend that we're seeing here.
Yes.
Just the world is also getting, well, that's it. No, I was about to say the world is getting more violent, but last book was the Slaughterhouse-9, so that's probably not true.
Yeah, but it's becoming like more widespread. Like with the Slaughterhouse-9, it was this sort of like back and forth, and it was understood that they were like the worst of the worst,
right?
But then now it's like our main character is engaging in violence, and everybody's sort of kind of like jumping in. I feel like while we already knew that it could be dark, like it has become darker because of the amount of people, kind of, I don't know, like. Yeah,
it feels like violence and like bloody violence. Like not the superhero, punch people and they get knocked unconscious, obviously. Not that Worm ever was that. But bloody violence is like becoming more and more common in the story as a whole, and we see that with Kraus and just deciding to off Cody at the end of it,
and like lasting, like visible, not carnage, but like you can see the effects longer. It's not like the cartoon violence that like you forget after a couple of scenes. It's like they're carrying all of this violence from the past, and then the continued, like there's like physical ramifications.
I think this section focuses a lot on how consequences are actually starting to come to bear, right? We have all these injuries that go on for a long time, but we also have after these, Rockton Day has just faced a series of terrible crises, and now we're kind of seeing the real long-term ripples in their aftermath, and Taylor finally getting, well, not many, but some consequences as well.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know about all of hers.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot that she has to think about.
Contend with, yeah.
Yeah. Anything else we want to mention here?
I think we're good on the book as a whole.
We did talk a lot about the book already, so yes, there is of course always more we can talk about. Yes, it's Clarence speculations. There's a couple things I specifically wanted you to ask. There's a couple of things I specifically wanted to ask you. So, for example, what's up with Noelle?
I don't know, but I'm very excited to find out. I'm thinking perhaps maybe she's a baby Endbringer, which would be like horrible and like not great in terms of like the whole like end of the world is coming soon, but also be so fucking cool. Like that would be so exciting, you know? Because we can like trace the beginnings of it, and maybe we'll like know what her motivations are, so we can figure out what the other people's motivations are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's this whole large question mark.
Yes.
You know, because I feel like, I mean, I don't remember if I feel like I mentioned it before, where she seems to be this sort of like the guided missile. I put Bullet Destiny because I forgot what it was called, but
Bullet Destiny is a wonderful name. Actually, that's a great video game name, a great band name. Bullet Destiny.
Destiny.
A great song
that's
name.
Really good. Yeah.
I'm gonna remember that.
Write it down.
If anyone
put a pin
creates something under the name Bullet Destiny, it's copyright Clarence Brooks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just write me a little handwritten note about it.
Mm-hmm. I also.
Yeah. So.
Go ahead.
Oh well, I don't know. Like she poses the immediate next threat.
Right.
I assume, right? Because she's gotten out, and we have to like kind of deal with whatever's going to happen with her. So I assume that we're going to find out kind of where she's headed in the next few arcs.
Mm-hmm. What do you think she does? I don't want to ask what her power is, because it's more like her body, I guess.
Yeah, it does seem like her body like produces these murderous twins, right? So it's like perhaps she's been set up to create the opposition for every. It's almost like the Nemesis Project with Cauldron, where they set up, you know, these foil not even foil, but like, you know, like they set up these like back and forth good and evil. But it seems like she creates the monsters that will be able to defeat anybody. But then it's like, why? What do we need that for? You know, don't we need all the parahumans and they're like passengers? I thought we were like creating them for whatever reason. I don't know. But then also, you know, does she still just like consume regular meat, or does she like consume humans? Because that was definitely in my head before we knew anything about her. Is that she just like ate people.
Yeah, something happened to 40 people at some point, which is...
Yeah, so it seems like...
really scary.
There's some pretty big questions.
Yeah.
About...
Just the fact that she continually eats meat but doesn't ever, you know, deposit waste is...
Yes. So she's just like continuously growing?
I guess so. But like, the thing about that is just that the rate seems to increase so much. Like, well, then again, I don't know how often she's being fed, right? But during, when they're in Boston with Accord, she eats like, Sundancer goes out and gets what, a whole pig or two, right?
Yeah, like a couple of pigs. Like that's a lot of food to consume.
But that's a lot of extra mass to gain. That's the scary part to me.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah. Poor Noelle. She did deserve
I know.
this.
She like really didn't ask for this at all.
Yeah. Poor damaged girl.
I mean, that's like a whole nother thing of like, she just wanted to like be on her own, do her thing.
Yeah.
And then like Krause comes along and is like, oh, I mean, I'll respect you, but let me fuck everything up. You know? I don't know. It's just...
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
But I expect we'll have more to talk about later. So my next question for you is, do you have any big world-building guesses? So powers, what's Cauldron doing, trigger visions, other stuff?
Yes. Well, before I get into the more like serious Endbringer things that I have been thinking about, I would like to mention that the trigger vision that we saw for Carol Brandish was like all these little eggs in a line that like, and I think, am I remembering that correctly? There was all these like eggs in a singular line or something. There was just like a lot of them.
All the trigger visions are one long vision in my head, so I cannot remember.
Because I feel like it was distinct from the like two flapping beings. Because like she didn't notice flapping beings, she noticed like this whole line of eggs, and it immediately made me think of like Mork,
which is
it's a sitcom about this alien who like comes to Earth in an egg. You know, he was on Happy Days first, and then now he had his own show with like it's Robin Williams, his character from like the 70s. Yeah, it was a lot to handle. I mean, it's more of like a comedy, and it doesn't really fit in. But that immediately made me think like, I don't know. It just what are the eggs? You know, like, who are they?
Who
What's
are the
hatching
eggs?
from them? Are there only those two flapping beings? Like, are there more of them? Are they, like, creating the eggs? I don't know. There's so many questions.
It says here, I just pulled it open. So it's an egg. She realized just in time to see it hatch. It unfolds from a condensed point to grow larger with every moment and movement. Others were hatching from the same egg, spreading out like sparks from the shell of a firework, unfolding into something vast and incomprehensible within seconds of birth. And then they form pairs or trios in some cases. And
yeah, see, there was like more of them than usual.
yeah, it says that then they settle around the egg and then it vibrates, but it's not actually vibrating. It's multiple copies of the egg deviating until double images appear, and then they all crumble to a single point.
Mm-hmm.
And then the egg explodes and the creatures come alive, soaring out into the vastness of the void. So that's what happens there.
So fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the eggs are crucial, but then you didn't remember them, so maybe they're not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Where is the egg? That's
true. Where does this keep happening? Like, do they transport it there, or do they just like? Does their mind?
It's also
like,
somewhere in space, is what it seems like.
What if is it like somebody else's memory? Is it the passenger's memory as they kind of like fold themselves into the brain? I don't know. So many questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Excellent questions to be asking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the thing about the other Endbringers, I wasn't really quite sure about how they were made, you know, because, I mean, if they're like Noelle, if Noelle does end up being an Endbringer, I mean, she doesn't know things, does she? Like, she doesn't seem to know things. I mean, we haven't really spoken to her, I guess.
Like the mysterious things that the Endbringers do?
Yeah, because the other Endbringers seem to, like, know things, you know, where, like, the Seamerg has, has more intention than, like, Leviathan did, but, like, I don't know, it seems like, you know, they seem informed about whatever's coming. So perhaps Noelle's also informed if she's, like, an Endbringer, but then she's kind of, like, late to be one, you know? Yeah. So maybe she's just, like, something else. I don't know. And then how the other ones made, like, are they, you know, made by accident? Like some of the other ones, or, like, some of the other parahumans, or do they also receive, like, a specific amount? You know, but then why would Cauldron make Endbringers? You know, like, what is Cauldron's whole deal? Yeah. Because they seem more like material than the vast beings that are flapping. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know. My theories are, like, slowly being redirected and, you know, continuously evolving.
Yes. And I'm not saying anything. So what do you, there's a couple questions here. Basically, what do you think is going on with the relationship with Brian and Taylor? What's going to go on there?
Oh, yes. I think if they don't fall in love with anyone else, you know, the, like, fiery, passionate, etc., you know, that sort of romantic love, I guess. I mean, they'll probably, like, they could become, you know, like, the decades-long steady sort of, like, they have that sort of pragmatic comfortability with each other, but then I'm also thinking about, like, the direction that Taylor is going, and then the fact that Brian hasn't really addressed, like, what he's gone through. He's just kind of, like, settled into not addressing it. I feel like things are not gonna, like, there'll be something that will, like, kind of throw a wrench in this idyllic image.
Yeah.
You know?
What do you think are some of the, like, what do you think is Taylor's long-term trajectory?
Taylor's long-term trajectory?
Not necessarily, but on every level, including plot.
I feel like she is headed, I feel like somehow she's going to end up kind of figuring out about Cauldron, and she seems determined to, like, find a solution to the end of the world. So I feel like she'll maybe be involved in, if there's any sort of, you know, kind of, maybe stopping or rerouting of that. I feel like she'd be involved in that. But also, I feel like somehow she's going to, like, have to come to terms with what she has done in, you know, the face of, like, the heroes or the protectorate or something. Somehow I feel like she's going to end up in the birdcage. But I don't know how that'll work. Or she'll, like, end up, I don't know, there'll be some sort of overlap with that, I feel like.
Okay.
You know? Or, like, some sort of communication with that. I don't know. I'm feeling less likely that she'll team up with Dragon, because Dragon's kind of, like, stuck doing other things. And they haven't had a great track record.
By they, you mean like by blowing up her suits?
Yeah, like the Undersiders kind of, I don't know, they sort of burned that bridge in their protecting of all of their stuff. But maybe, I don't know, maybe Legend shows up to kind of to team up, I guess, maybe against Cauldron. I don't know.
These predictions are getting more complicated as you speak.
Oh, well, I have a lot of expectations. But also I'm leaving it open for change. I don't know. It would be cool, though. It would be cool if they teamed up, Legend and Taylor.
That would be cool. I do agree. Yes. Oh, another thing, though, is that Legend has not done anything yet, it seems. So.
Yeah, he seems to be biding his time. But it's also, like, not been that long.
Yeah.
You know, or maybe he's been up to something and we don't know.
That is true. Do you have any other predictions about any other aspect of the characters or plot?
I don't know if I totally believe that Coil is dead. Mostly because I am usually suspect when, you know, a big fancy villain dies.
He did already die once, so...
that's true. I don't know. I feel like he's an unpredictable one. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, quite literally, Tattletale cannot.
Yeah. They're kind of stuck in an impasse, them too.
And of course, I also wanted to ask, what do you think is going to happen in the immediate future now that Noelle is free and angry?
Yes.
And a bit bigger now.
Oh, I feel like the city is not going to be saved by the government. I think they're going to be kind of like, that's one too many times.
Yeah.
We've had to kind of deal with this. But I do feel like maybe perhaps some of the heroes that were down for some vigilante, you know, happenings. I feel like maybe they might be willing to team up kind of how they did with the ABB. But I don't know, because, I mean, Noelle is Noelle, right?
Yes.
And she's within that, whatever she is. So maybe she can be reasoned with a bit? I don't know. I don't know how optimistic I am about that. Yeah.
Poor girl.
We'll see. Yeah, I know. I feel bad for her.
Well, all right. Let's get into the listener questions for the questions for Clarence. So we just have a couple. So Sarah Penguin asks, is the birdcage a human rights violation?
My answer is 3 times yes. And also maybe I think so, because I don't know like the stipulations, like all the fancy rules of like the Geneva Convention and all of that. But I feel like the answer is yes, because we were talking about the dentistry and like, you know, how Amy...
They seem that they don't have access to healthcare, so...
Yeah, it doesn't seem like they're supposed to be self-sufficient, is what I've gathered mostly. Or like that they're governing themselves or kind of regulating themselves, which I feel like kind of opens it up to like unregulated murder and like rape and like all of I don't know. It just seems like this is a place that has the overseeing, you know, kind of all-seeing AI that they speak to sometimes like a god or like as a confessional sort of thing. Like there isn't, I mean, there's that surveillance, but like how much involvement is there? How much like regulation, I guess?
Yeah.
Or like kind of making sure that everybody's okay. You know, I mean, what happened to Bakuda and all of this? I don't know. I feel like there's a mess there that nobody's kind of addressing.
Yeah, it seems that like murder is not uncommon here.
Yeah.
And there's this interesting thing where such a like a limited amount of goods are like deposited every, you know, I forget what the time span is, but it's so like intentionally limited to like,
like
I guess
they've set it up to be this kind of very isolated, you know, unsupported situation.
I wonder if like the limited amount of books and other kinds of distractions is kind of like to get them to be distracted with just the little dramas of like trading and the rules of like these kind of petty differences rather than like teaming up to, you know, trying to get out or something like that. I don't know.
Oh yeah, like intentionally divide them up.
Yeah, but not even just like divide them up specifically.
Them?
Yeah, preoccupy them. Where like they're like more focused on how do I get more cigarettes to, get that other book that this other guy has.
Menial things. Oh, also, I totally forgot. I wrote this as my secondary point. Is that like the way that Amy like just decides that she wants to go to the birdcage. I mean, she has like multiple different options, but like she just decides, and everyone is kind of like, okay, this is gonna happen. Like I assume there's probably like due process or something, or like some sort of like legislative or judicial. Judicial. That's what it is. Judicial. Bureaucratic like pathways that need to like examine these people before they like send them off. Like I assume there's something there that is like that, but of the people that we have heard being sent off to the birdcage, there hasn't been that, kind of articulated. So I don't know how much of this sentencing is kind of written into like the laws or laws of the land, however that is.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that's a human rights violation or if that's just like a civil rights violation.
I'm not sure. I don't know. It's probably civil rights, I think. I think due process is more a civil rights thing.
It's more of like a... true.
But yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, she can just supersede that just by asking to go. I don't know if there's anything revealed that, complicates that, but yeah.
Yeah.
But all right, next question. Vice Versailles asks, aside from the answer everyone, who amongst the current cast needs therapy the most? Do you think they'd be receptive to the process? And from a writer's perspective, what about the way they've been presented in the text, not just the individual story beats, but particularly how their actions and opinions have been approached and described has given you that impression?
Yes. I think first off, definitely Brian immediately, like, especially for this particular moment, because he is experiencing symptoms of PTSD so like it's like he's having these like debilitating flashbacks of the event, and like he's having trouble sleeping and all of this, and he has like, a great amount, like heightened sense of anxiety and like paranoia and all of this. Like, I think he needs it like the most like immediately, I would say, if I was to like pick one particular person out. I mentioned also like maybe the heroes for like grief counseling, because like they seem to be kind of in a pickle there. I mean, that's seems like I'm making light of their pain, but like how readily they turn. Like I feel like they've been kind of needing this since the Leviathan though, and it gets kind of exacerbated after the 9. Yeah. Oh, maybe Armsmaster I think too, but I don't know how receptive he'd be to it.
Yeah. Just
because like, I mean, he's already kind of, I mean, he doesn't have that understanding of what he has done as wrong, so I don't know how open he'd be to like discussing it and kind of sorting through what led him there and all that. I guess that would be more like rehabilitation sort of counseling services.
I think so too.
Yeah.
So the tier list for you right now, it goes Brian, Heroes, Armsmaster.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because I feel like some others like need not necessarily like counseling, but they need like other sorts of therapy, I guess. Because like with Dinah, I mean, I assume she's probably going to need like help kind of navigating the like physicality of like withdrawal.
Right.
In this like immediate, I didn't even think about all of the travelers. It's like they're probably feeling really like out of place and like discombobulated. I mean, they've been here for like a couple of years, but they've been here
for 2 years as outsiders.
Yeah, as outsiders, having not really told anyone that, right? And like living with this kind of like fear of being discovered. Yeah. One, both from being somewhere from like, just their general like of being their outsidedness, I guess. But then additionally like coming from a like quarantined place of like the
I think that's the main thing. Like they're afraid of admitting that they're from an alternate Earth. I don't think like that's as big a deal as they like think it is, because it's something that happened once. However, they came from an alternate Earth because the Seamerg opened a portal.
Yes, which makes it much worse.
Yeah. I mean, you saw the quarantine process. People are supposed to be monitored for monitored like with twice weekly visits, I think it is, for the rest of their life, basically.
Yeah, it's pretty intense monitoring.
And the travelers have not had that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then they're kind of like dealing with that, like all of those sorts of like secrets, I think. But then, this sort of like I don't know, I feel like they have a lot of like, they need to have like group therapy, where they like sit down all together and kind of sort through all of these things that are like sitting beneath the surface, but like really, really thinly beneath the surface.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would have said Amy. So.
Oh my god, I totally forgot about Amy. No, that's true. Yes. I had that thought like in the middle of when we were discussing things, and I feel like she would also be high on the list. She'd be like above the heroes.
Yeah, I think,
but maybe
Brian,
like below, maybe like beside Brian. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally Amy gets counseling and then fixes Victoria, but it doesn't go to the birdcage. But
that would be like such a wonderful place for her to like deal with all these things and like be able to face herself and like admit what she has done.
Yeah.
And kind of sort through her own feelings versus like her father's and how she feels about being her father's child and all of this. Yeah. Yes. She would be prime candidate. Yes.
But I think she hates herself too much to go to therapy.
Yeah, that's true.
She'd think I don't deserve
so
to be helped. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. About how the text has presented that, and how their actions and opinions have been approached and described. So on Brian, the textual stuff.
Yeah, the textual stuff, I would say, particularly like within his interlude and even before that, like in the moments where he's interacting with Taylor and that sort of thing, we see him struggling with his own, like he's articulating his anxieties and kind of we see him having those flashbacks, but then also like the fact that, both his sister and Taylor have spoken into the kind of, expanse of their conversation, articulating how they have also noticed. And he sees it as like weakness where he like can't get over it. Which I don't know if that's like a symptom. I haven't read that much about PTSD, but like, I feel like his determination to like just be able to like, work through it, but like not really kind of take a moment for himself and kind of like calm himself down. Yeah. I feel like those were his like heart's racing and all of this, I feel like that's, we see the like physical symptoms of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like oh, sorry, go ahead.
With Brian and Amy, I think there's both of them have particular, ways of thinking about themselves and thinking about their own trauma that like makes getting over the trauma even more difficult. And I think those are the things especially that a therapist would unravel and make it easier for them to deal with stuff.
Yeah. 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 I feel like some of the other ones are just like trauma, counseling, that sort of thing. Like, yeah. But because we really get a glimpse at both Amy and Brian's, mentalities, and we see those like tics, I think those are the most like textually visible ones.
Yeah. Yeah. So our last question this week is from Azazel Crowley, who asks, with this section now concluded, what do you think the future plans are for Taylor? What does the future hold for the city and its residents, especially in sociological terms, given the new dynamic in place? Or how would residents relate to it, and so on?
I think Taylor, now that she has Dinah, actually, I don't know. I feel like they will be able to communicate with each other, but I feel like, I don't know, I worry about Dinah. I hope she's okay. But, I feel like Taylor, she has the information to perhaps begin, to deal with Cauldron, but she doesn't know, like, fully the extent of any of that. So right now she's still kind of, like, stuck in the city, and she'll have to, like, kind of address the situation with Noelle. Mm-hmm. That's the most, like, immediate. But I feel like the next step is to learn about Cauldron and kind of get some, maybe some, like, informational, digging around. Yeah, I don't know, because they're kind of, like, the threat in the background. Yeah. So I don't know how fast that, like, will kind of dig into them, or if that will happen later, but... And then with the city now, I mean, it's kind of... I was thinking about this, like, before... I mean, before it appeared to be run by teens, but it actually had Coyle kind of running
now
things
it's truly
in the background.
run by
But now
teens.
It's, like, definitely run by teenagers who are villains. You know, so I don't know how supported the city will be from the outside, because I know there was this whole thing where the mayor went to go to Washington and was like, don't condemn the city, like, it'll be great. I don't know if that's gonna, like, hold up now, though.
Yeah.
Because, like, the mayoral, debate or whatever was bombed and all of this. Yeah, but my metaphor, I don't know if it, holds up, but I was imagining where it was like how the city rebuilding is quite the task that, Tattletale has in store. I mean, plus everybody else, but it's this kind of like this pile of dirty dishes that, like, they're beloved and, they had great food on them, but, like, now they're messy and you have to, like, clean them, but, like, you might drop them.
On the way
it'll take some maneuvering before you can, like, get back to the kitchen to clean them.
And even start, yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like there's, like, it's quite a monumental task, I think, this, like, city rebuilding.
Yeah. Rockton's Bay is a mess.
It is.
Mm-hmm. And on that note, let's close out our show. That's all we have for y'all this week. Let's talk about what's going on in Doof Media, and then just go ahead and outro out.
Mm-hmm.
So just some other stuff that's going on this week, 2 days before this episode comes out, because we're 1 day late on this. A Doofcast episode on the short story 1777-6. I don't know what the order you're supposed to read that in, but it's a short story, dystopian, so you can go ahead and read it and then listen to the episode. It's a great discussion, as always. And then the other show I want to plug, because we haven't yet, is Kingslingers. So Kingslingers is Scott and Matt's Stephen King We've Got Worm treatment. We need a term for that without saying We've Got Worm every time, because that's like the doof thing. So but they're going through Stephen King's Dark Tower series. They're on Wizard and Glass, and the most recent episode was on Wizard and Glass, and it's part 2. So, a lot of cool stuff going on over there as well.
All right. Also, for the Patreon, if you like what we do here at Doof Media, consider donating a single $1 per month, or whatever else you can afford. It's due to the generosity of our patrons that we're able to create shows like this. Patron dollars are what pays our hosting fees and how we're able to purchase, like, the microphone, all of this.
You can go to patreon.com/doofmedia and see all the patron rewards we have. Recently, there was another episode. I don't know if episode is the right word, but at a $10 level, you get access to exclusive bonus content where, and now we're starting to have an actual, thing going on. We have an exclusive, I think a podcast feed, although sometimes bonus content is not podcast stuff, but an RSS feed that you could subscribe to once you're a $10 patron. And right now, there's a conversation from Matt and his brother Daniel talking about all sorts of philosophical stuff. It's called Freeman Bros. It's not like an official podcast, but it's their conversations, and I think they're very, very interesting.
Also, please consider donating to Wildbow's Patreon, because, Wildbow relies on the income from the Patreon to make a living, and without him, we wouldn't have this wonderful web serial, or really any of the others. Like, it's very important to support writers, and specifically Wildbow, to show support. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And ensure that he can continue doing this without starving, which is always a pro.
Very important. Very important to show our support, monetarily to the arts.
And of course, if you do not have money for Patreon, we completely understand. There are plenty of other ways to help us out. You can tell someone about Worm or about this podcast. That helps us immensely. Or you can leave us a rating review on iTunes or your podcasting app. You can be like Blueberry Fathead, who says, I read Worm alongside the We've Got Worm podcast, currently only partway through Ward and both. And then this. I'm so very happy Doof is making a second one of these. Next, we need one with at least 2 people that have both read the whole book once, then one for people that have read it multiple times and analyzed it, then one for after reading all of Worm and Ward and everything else parahuman and reevaluating everything. They also add that my Marxist theory explanation in the first perspective can focus more on the book. So I think I'll be taking in that advice as well going into the next perspective episode. And of course, if you disagree and you want even more theory or something, you can always email us at decomposingpod@gmail.com.
Yeah.
They finish off saying, more time discussing the book is time well spent. 5 stars. Don't be unfair to Taylor. Well, to be fair to us being unfair to Taylor, I think it's pretty clear what we should be thinking about her at certain points.
Yeah.
So next week is our perspective episode for this book. By the time this episode comes out, it will already have been recorded, so we won't be addressing comments from this thread. So if you want to leave comments on Reddit or send us those emails, it'll be for the next overview and perspective section, where we'll be covering arcs 18 through 22. However, we'd also just love to hear what you guys thought of this episode. So you can do that at the Reddit thread linked in the description. That's all we have for y'all this week. For those reading along with us, the next section is arcs 18 through 22. You can join us next week on our perspective episode.
Yeah, we're looking forward to using our literary theories to delve deeper into Bourne's unexplored themes.